All right, are you guys ready? Okay, good evening. We'll begin the meeting. It's Tuesday, November 12th of 2024. This is the Stoughton City Council meeting, and the first order of business would be the roll call.
Okay, Wozniak, Scanlon. Mayaski. Schumacher.
Here.
Caravello.
Here.
Butler.
Here.
Hirsch.
Here.
Lucky.
Absent and excused.
Yep, he'll be arriving late. Lagaki. Abel.
Here.
Okay, we have 8 alders present at the moment. Lucky is absent and excused, as well as Jensen and Peyton.
All right, thank you. We are certified in compliance with open meeting laws. And then we have a public hearing. The first public hearing, actually, we held at the last meeting. So we're going to go right on to the second public hearing. So we'll be adjourning our regular council meeting and then opening for a public hearing. I did not have anybody signed up to speak regarding the budget. Is there anybody here that wishes to speak regarding the city budget? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing and then we'll reopen for our regular business. And the first item would be public comment. I did not have anyone signed up to speak. Does anyone here want to speak at the public comment? If not, I'll share with the council members that we did get a submission from Brianna Welch, and she wanted to register in support of our 156 2024, which is item number 16. So she's registered in support of the sustainability plan. We'll move right into communications and presentations. And the first one would be the historical fact of Stoughton.
All right, just a couple of them. You missed out in Finance Committee if you weren't listening. We talked about the Teapot Dome scandal. So. All right, for tonight, we've got I've got some further other council actions that have taken place over at history, all in the month of November. So in 1878, the city had paid G.T. Mant $17.87 to supervise bridge repair, with $1.25 per day for labor. Right. In 1881, J.C. Johnson had a permit for a bowling alley, which I believe was the first bowling alley in the city. City also voted to pay the election clerk and inspectors $2 a day. So, Candy, we're thinking about you on that one. In 1884, GM Burnett had a contract for the fire station for $1,925. So keep that in mind, Chief, when for any other.
Is there more?
There's more, a couple more. 1906, there was a citizen petition for day and night electricity. For day and night, both. 1925, the council approved $3,000 for the hospital, as nobody represents the hospital. I was trying. In 1938, the armory was built or approved to be built as a WPA project, a work progress administration project. That's it.
All right, thank you. Are there any communications or from the city council members? All right, hearing none, we'll go into presentations. We're going to give a quick update. I'm going to do this in reverse order. So I'm starting with E. So that would be our update on the redevelopment authority. Alderperson Hirsch.
Sure. I just want to keep you guys abreast. The redevelopment authority has now hired one, Gary Becker to be the executive director, and I'm currently chair. Two, last time we approved the MOU for the developer for earnest money to pay us $25,000. We have received that check, so that's going forward. We talked to the developer on Monday, and they plan to provide a concept plan, basic concept plan, but in our December of RDA meeting. So things are progressing, and so I thought I would just keep you guys up to date.
Excellent, thank you. The next item would be the mayoral budget presentation, and I'm just going to cue that up quick. In your packet, you'll see there's a few different documents, and I'm just going to go through a quick synopsis of the budget, and then Director Ellinger can go through some as well, and then there's a complete document in there, which I'm sure you've all read many times, that we can review if you'd like. So I'm going to share the screen, and then I'll start out with this. Okay, so we started the budget back in, seems like eternity now, and we're here tonight for consideration for approval. And when I go through the budget, there's some things I just want to highlight quick. The first one is, yeah, I'm not sure where that's from. Is it better now? Okay, we'll try it now. First thing we want to do is to articulate that, we do have some challenges with the budget. The spending limits that were imposed upon us from the state of Wisconsin, we're 13 years into that now. So as you've heard many years, and including this one, every year the budget gets more challenging to do. We worked very hard with the finance team and the finance committee. We presented twice there to get the recommendation that we're going to be looking at tonight. Number one goal is always to maintain all the current positions we have. We'd like to be able to give, an increase in wages to our employees. 3% is pretty average in Dane County right now. It's kind of modest when you compare, what the costs are for each of us, even in our homes. So 3%, seems appropriate at this time. We also really value our health care plan. We've probably heard Director Gillingham on several occasions explain that our health care is really one of the things that helps us attract and retain our talent. And that's always one of our goals when we go through the budget, is not only to maintain the positions, but keep the people we have in this ever increasing competitive nature of the labor market right now. We compete with other municipalities as well as the private sector for our employees. So health insurance is one of the tools that we use in order to keep people working here in the city of Stoughton. We did add some hours in the HR department. I want to say we took 4 hours a week. That department has been extremely busy the last several years, and done a wonderful job of keeping us as close to fully staffed as we could possibly be. When I talk to other municipalities, especially in the area of the police department, they're really struggling to keep staff and to recruit replacements for people as they leave. So our HR department, we added a few hours there. And then we also added an additional firefighter/advanced EMT position. That position is being paid for out of the EMS funding, which is separate from the tax levy. They're set up, as you may have heard, as an enterprise fund. So the EMS budget is based on the revenue that they get for doing the calls. So it might be from insurance companies or people that pay their own costs associated with the care they get from our EMS. So this slide here kind of shows what our levies are. So we have two parts to our budget. We have the operations, which is 70% of that is our staff. And in the slides, you'll see that 41% of our costs for our entire city operations budget is for public safety, and then it's broken down by the other departments. The other part of our tax is our debt service. That's the one really, we call it the CIP, or Capital Improvement Plan. That's the one that we really have the most discretion as far as how much money we borrow on an annual basis. The operations is basically whatever we had for expenses last year, plus whatever we're allowed under the net new construction formula. So our total property tax levy this year will be just over $12 million. And then we also have our expenses in there, and Stoughton Utilities budget you'll see is separate. And then our mill rate is $6.84 per thousand, and that's just the city portion. There's also on the tax bill, residents will see the portion for the school district and Madison College and Dane County as well. We do have a stormwater utility fee, and that's an ERU is basically a unit that we use, and basically a single family home is one unit. And then the bigger the impervious surface is, helps determine basically how many ERUs that a larger facility like a business or a school district or a church would be. We had no change in our costs for the stormwater utility. And then our garbage collection is also separate from the property tax bill, but it shows up on there as well. And there was a slight increase there, but we've been really happy with the service that Johns has provided us over the years. This shows us kind of a comparison from this year from last year. So you can see on our operational, which, as I mentioned, is our the one that we have the levy limits on, and I typically refer that one as cash because that's the property tax. And then the debt service, which I sometimes call the credit card, and that's the money we borrow for, which are typically 10 or 20-year bonds or notes. And you can see we had a significant increase in our debt service limit or increase. And we've been really aggressive the last several years with road construction projects, including, replacing the lead service lines, as well as upgrades in our parks and our trail systems. We have pretty consistent numbers as far as rotating our vehicles and our building maintenance as well. We've had a fair amount of maintenance on our buildings, putting in high efficiency HVAC units and things like that. And this kind of breaks down our mill rate. We have our average home value in there. So you can see on a $357,000 home, the city portion of the property tax is going to be going up $229.50. And I would add that the school districts is actually going up more than that. And that's basically because they've had two referendums that have passed here in the last several months. And this one here just kind of shows our mill rate. And you can see that our mill rate, the top line is the total mill rate, which includes all the taxing authorities that I mentioned. And then the lower bluish line is the city mill rate. And you can see it's been pretty well between $7 and $8 per thousand the last several years. And that's the one that's controlled basically by the levy limit. So that one hasn't really shifted too much. What's really contributed to the property tax increase is the rising property values. And a lot of that has to do with labor shortages, supply chain issues, the cost of materials, as well as housing shortage, which has really ratcheted up the prices when people are purchasing new homes. This slide here shows we did have several personnel requests. So the first one we did fund, as I mentioned, through the EMS Enterprise Fund. And then we had several other ones that we just didn't have any money available to fund them. I think that our staff is pretty conservative when they submit new positions. I'm sure that, if they had a blank checkbook, they would probably submit more than this, but these are the ones that they felt were absolutely necessary to have. And unfortunately, under the levy limits, we're not really in a position to fund them. And this is something that we're going to have to address as the city continues to grow. It's just not a sustainable model. This isn't unique to Stoughton. We're seeing this all over Dane County and the state of Wisconsin as well. So the bottom line here is our budget here, we're asking for $112,762 out of our reserve fund balance to balance our budget this year. Last year, we used about $32,000 to balance our budget, and you can see that Finance Department has kind of broken down our fund balance amount and our percentage, and we could actually fund it this way through 2026, but once we get to 2027 and beyond, now we're starting to push our limits as far as our fund balance policy. It's always good to have a healthy fund balance between 20 and 25%. It helps us when we borrow money to get a better credit score from Moody's, so we get a lower interest rate on our borrowing. So this is something that we'll continue to monitor, and then we'll continue to, lobby the state to help us, address our funding challenges. Like I said, we've seen that all over Dane County. There were several municipalities that had referendums last week. Monona, they had a referendum. There's operations referendum passed by 32 votes. Fitchburg had operations referendum. Theirs failed by about 1,000 votes. Madison had an operations referendum as well as 2 school referendums, one for building and one for operations. Theirs passed. Maple Bluff had a referendum. Theirs passed. Middleton had a referendum to raise their ERU amount on the stormwater fee. That passed. And then I know Sun Prairie is going to implement a wheel tax, and other municipalities are looking at going to referendum in 2026. At this point, I'm not recommending that, but, we'll have conversations at the Finance Committee about where we are and what that'll look like as we project out. And then there, kind of in the longer versions, there's some scenarios in there that the Finance Department put together using some assumptions. So that's basically what I have. Are there any questions on that part of it? All right. And was there anything the Finance Department wanted to elaborate as far as the fund balance or any of the other slides?
No, at this point, no. I think you did a very good job. Just a general comment. My IT staff at home wants to remind everybody, make sure you push your buttons because they can't hear it all the time on TDS. Thank you.
So are there any questions for us on the budget? Or we can go through as much or as little as you want. If you want to get into the details, we can. I think we covered it pretty well at 2 Finance Committee meetings. We were going to present this and more at the last council meeting, but given the lateness of the meeting, City Council decided not to go into that conversation, but we certainly can tonight if you so choose.
Just one point.
Go ahead.
Also want to point out, at least in the budgeting in there, even though we're at 112,000 to come out of general fund, at one point in time that was 180 to 200,000. So lots of credit to Finance Department for really digging in and finding where we could get those savings done.
Okay. Alderperson Hirsch.
Yeah, I appreciate all the work that the Finance and the Finance Committee put into this, but I know with efficiencies this year, you really wanted to streamline this, but I just feel like 4 people from our city council know this budget really, really, really well. 8 of us have read it and got a really refined kind of presentation, when previous years we had multiple presentations and really understood the needs of each department and what was there. I mean, we didn't have any CIP meetings, we didn't have budget meetings. I feel that even though it's more efficient, I don't feel like we're really doing our due diligence as the rest of the council. I think the 4 people on finance probably did a really great job, but all 12 of us are voting on this. And we can read and read, but we missed the presentations by all the department heads. We missed so much of the budget that helps us understand where all the numbers came from, but also what each department really, really needs. And I think that we can find a happy medium between efficiency and multiple meetings. And I guess that's would be my recommendation going forward, is that I think budgets are really important. That's a big part of city council, and you're asking us to approve millions and millions of dollars without a lot of discussion and understanding from city departments.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions or comments? I mean, we'll do whatever you'd like us to do. As I mentioned, we did have 2 finance committee meetings where we went through the operations budget. Those meetings are right before the council. Everybody's welcome to attend those. We did have 2 CIP meetings as well, and that's where we covered all the items that we borrow for. And the CIP committee is made up of the chairperson from each of the standing committees. What we eliminated this year was the committee of the whole, which was basically going through the operations budget, as well as reviewing the CIP recommendations from the CIP committee. So if that's something that the city council would like to go back to, we could certainly do that. The operations budget, really at the end of the day, there's really not a lot of wiggle room because of the spending limits. As I said, where we have the most discretion is really in the capital, the big ticket items that we borrow for. One thing we didn't cover, and maybe we should touch on this quickly, is the net new construction. So in the other presentation, the longer document, we do have some slides in there which we can go through quick, but this kind of explains where our budget is at. So we basically start with a zero-based budget on our operations, and we're allowed to raise our levy or our property taxes based on the net new construction, which is a formula based on the growth. And the idea of that is, as the community grows, if you raise your taxes, at least it's distributed to a larger group of taxpayers. My experience has been that formula works great if you're trying to keep taxes down, but it doesn't work so great if you're trying to provide services. And that's why we're seeing all these referendums. So under 2025, we had a record year of net new construction at 3.54%. And Dave can probably explain this better than I can, but there was a change in Act 12, which affected our personal property tax. So it shows that our levy increase was $130,000, but it was actually more like $254,000, but there was an adjustment made for the personal property tax law change that they made for businesses. But the issue is we start providing services oftentimes before we start collecting money on the new developments. So the roads are built using either CIP money or using TIF money. And then some of the homes start getting constructed, but we start plowing the roads, building and maintaining parks, helping people if they have a police, fire, or EMS call. Before it's fully developed and we're fully collecting the money, we're already providing basically, in some cases, 100% of the services, depending on the department, before we collect the revenue, because the revenue lags, because they have to get built, then they have to get assessed on January 1st, and then we don't actually collect the money until the following year. So that's one of the flaws I believe there is in the funding formula. Others would disagree with that, but it's no coincidence that all the municipalities throughout the state, whether they're growing or not, are experiencing and having the same conversations that we are. This chart here showed our net new construction, and you can see that we did have a record year. In fact, the last 3 years have been the 3 highest years on record for Stoughton since the limits went into place in 2012. But the amount of revenue this year, for example, the 130, our health insurance premiums went up $178,000. So that kind of shows you that the cost of health insurance, the cost of a 3% raise for our employees, our utility costs go up, our insurance on our vehicles and on our buildings went up over 30%. This formula is woefully outdated based on the needs of the communities and the rising costs. Just like at home, everything has gone up there as well. So that's kind of the conundrum we're in. So when it comes to the operations part of the budget, there's really, quite honestly, sadly, there's not much to talk about. We're not going to be able to, not make enough copies on the copy machine to balance the budget. That's basically how I always phrase it. But certainly if the council wants us to be more in depth for next year, we can certainly do that. I would love to be in a position where we had more resources so we could have deeper conversations, especially on the operations budget, going forward. But until there's a change in state law, we're going to be in the same situation. Anything else you want to add?
No, I was just curious. So we had more net new construction by 3.5%, but yet our allowed levy increase was less than when we had it last year. So how does that work? I mean, that seems...
I'll let Dave explain that, and that had to do with that Act 12. So basically, they gave us revenue on a different line, and it came out of here to make us whole, is kind of how I understood it, but you can explain it much more clearly than I can.
The actual calculation for the levy increase was about $284,000. As the mayor indicated, 23 Act 12 changed how personal property, or actually eliminated the personal property tax. And so the Department of Revenue, along with the assessors and, Department of Revenue assesses for manufacturing, and we've got our own assessors. Those values were reported to Revenue, who then recalculated the amount for the entire state. That gave us $154,000 in revenue. That $154,000 will continue in subsequent years, but will never increase. So if you take the $284,000 that we can go up by the net new construction limit, subtract the $154,000 that has to be taken out by the statutes, that gives us the $130,000 increase.
And that's been done the same way all the other years, so we're comparing apples to apples?
This was yes and no. In past years, we had a adjustment of $36,000 for a prior personal property tax adjustment. But this year, because of Act 23, we had a $36,000 subtraction, and then they added in $190,000. So it's kind of off balance that 1 year, but conceptually it works the same. Anything that we get for personal property tax credits is taken out on the levy limit worksheet. And the levy limit worksheet, I actually calculate that in Excel months before Revenue puts it out, so I've got some adjustments. But conceptually, it's the same way, and we agree with the numbers that Department of Revenue has out there. We were actually on a telephone call, or excuse me, a Zoom meeting with Department of Revenue, League of Wisconsin Municipalities, and City of Stoughton, so that we could walk through everything. because I had contended that the number 154,000 was too high. They pointed out, which I was not aware of, that the amount of manufacturing personal property, Cummins and Stoughton Trailers and so forth, is approximately 68% of our totals. We've only got 31% for all the other businesses, non-manufacturing. So we had a lot of major swings, but both Nicole Marie and I were on that call, and we truly understand where the numbers are coming from, and we agree with them.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions or comments? So we'll make a note of it. We'll have conversations at finance going forward about how we want to handle it next year. But this is basically, what the council agreed to do this year. So hopefully you have enough information as we go through it. All right, next part of the agenda has to do with the reorganizational meeting. So as we all know that.
Mayor, I am sorry. I was trying to move my screen. I still have a question on the budget that I'd just like to bring your attention to.
Sure.
It's a question on page 33. There is a listing of the finance budget summary at the top of the page for finance, and then human resources and risk management. And it appears that the expenditures and the revenues are both exactly the same for those two departments. And I am wondering if we have the right information there.
Well, number one, that PowerPoint presentation was the one that was not discussed at the last council meeting. The numbers already changed. Number two, every department's revenues equals their expenditures. We have to have a balanced budget by the statute. So for each department, HR for instance, they have their expenditures. I'm just going to throw out a number. They've got $1,000 in expenditures. They've got $800 in revenue. The difference is $200. We allocate $200 of property tax revenue to that department. So every single department has a balanced budget to tie out. So we've been doing that for 3 years now.
So, Jean, you're talking about on the big budget thing?
yeah,
on page
I'm
53 on finance versus human resources, their budgets are identical,
Yes,
not the presentation.
yes, I am on page 33 of the budget. I just wanted to call your attention to that.
Oh, I apologize, we copied it wrong. One is for finance, one is for HR. We must have done a incorrect copy, cut, and paste.
This one was in the packet. I just did not want that information going forward, if we could catch it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so we'll move into our reorganizational part of the meeting. Former President Reeves, moved out of their district, so she had to resign. And after talking to legal counsel, it was determined that we need to go through the process to formally elect a new council president and vice president. Anything you want to add to that?
No, I guess just a couple of comments. You have, I guess, bylaws or council rules that say that you have a council president and a vice president. Doesn't say what happens if one of those positions becomes vacant. So I think the, logical thing to do is to elect a new vice president or a new president and a new vice president. So that's sort of the procedure that we've thought up, is sort of just a reorganization meeting, just to elect a new president, and if the thinking is to elevate the vice president to president, elect a new vice president.
Any questions on that? If not, I would open it up for nominations for city council president.
I so move that hopefully Brett Schumacher is open to being nominated for president.
Second.
All right, second by Alderperson Hirsch. Are there any nominations? Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? None opposed. That motion carries. You get to sit right here. It's like it's like Miss America. If something happens to me, you're in charge.
Fantastic.
Did they tell you that beforehand?
I knew that.
Okay. So then we would open up nominations for city council vice president.
Not that bad of a job.
Go ahead.
I guess I would nominate Patrick Butler.
How's that sound? All right. I don't know if we need a second or not in Robert's rules. I don't remember.
I don't believe we need a second for a nomination.
Yeah. All right. Are there any nominations once? Any other nominations twice? 3 times? All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 And any opposed?
I'll
Congratulations and thank you. All right. You two can switch seats if you want. Otherwise, we're good.
I warned him.
Okay. All right. So the next item is we're filling a vacancy, and thankfully we have 2 applicants that are here tonight. They've both submitted their questionnaire, and I think what we've done in the past, and if you want to do something different, let me know, is we basically have them come up and we can either go around and ask them questions, or they can elaborate on the questions that they had. It's totally up to you guys how you want to handle this. Do you have any suggestions, Attorney Manthe?
It's really your discretion on how you want to handle it. You could have them both up here and ask questions and have them answer at the same time and just sort of like go back and forth, I guess. Or you could have one candidate come up and ask questions and then have the other candidate come up. There's no right or wrong way to do this process.
Any preferences? Go ahead.
I think in the past, we had just one candidate at a time, and they kind of give us a kind of opening statement, and then we kind of ask questions from
Okay.
that. If I remember how we did this the last time, you were one of the candidates.
Yeah. Remember how that went?
Nerve-wracking, but
Maybe
yeah,
for you.
it was like an opening statement and then questions followed. I don't think we like reread the questions that they submitted. I thought that was kind of strange. Yeah, I think if either one of them would want to make just an opening remark and what you like about it, what you dislike about it, I don't know.
Yeah. Who wants to go first?
Can I?
Okay.
Can we have like the whole process so they know what the process is tonight? So they up here talk,
Yep.
we ask questions, and then what?
Yeah,
So
so
they
they can
know.
come up here and do their opening statement. You can ask questions. I would recommend you ask them both the same questions, for all fairness. And then once they're done, we have a paper ballots, and Nicole Marie has offered to help work with the clerk. So after both are done answering the questions, you can make a selection on the paper ballot who you would like us to appoint. And then We just ask, your name is already on it, and then you can just check one, and then Nicole Marie will collect them. And is there anybody that is online?
I think
Sarah's
two.
online.
And Jonathan.
Is Jonathan on
Yeah,
there?
they can chat you, can't they? Or
It'll
text
go to
you?
everybody. What we'd like you to do for those that are online, if you could just email Candy, and then Nicole Marie will give her the totals from the room. We usually do a paper ballot. They are subject to open records if somebody were to request them. Is that how I understood it?
And then when are they signed, whoever wins, when are they sworn in? Tonight or next meeting, or how does that work?
So that could be in the council's discretion. You could have it effective immediately. You could have the term take effect tomorrow. Candy can swear them in virtually tonight if that's the direction you want to go. So again, it's sort of in your discretion on when you want the term to actually start.
We kind of decide that
Yeah,
beforehand?
you can decide it now. I mean, that makes sense.
I think the assumption, and correct me if you're wrong, is that if you're selected, you're ready to go tonight. But it's totally up to the council and how you want to handle it.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So as far as the opening statement, I guess you can just kind of introduce yourself and kind of summarize what motivated you to apply for the position.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So most of you know me. For those that don't, my name is Jordan Tilson. I've been, I guess the best way to sum this up is longtime listener, first time caller type situation. I've been doing a lot of activities with the city over the past several years. Was first one to sign up when we had the citizens become part of the standing committees. I guess that was a real first taste into it. My first real taste of local government here was when I opened the dog daycare back in 2016. That was a 3-year process going up into that. I had to work on changing ordinances to make that happen. If we remember, there used to be an ordinance, you could only have 3 animals in town, and to create the commercial animal boarding ordinance from there. Got more involved by getting involved in downtown, and then which led into interest more into local government, which then led into the bug really biting and setting and joining some of the standing committees. I started at the Council Affairs or Community Affairs Council Policy. I enjoyed that so much, it got me more involved at the VFW in town, the Legion in town, joined the legislative side of the VFW, advocating for veterans there. Still enjoyed it so much, begged Mayor Swadley to get on another standing committee, joined the Public Works Committee, kept going through that, and continued to enjoy that, started to lead the legislative branch, became the chair for the VFW, handling state level politics for that, encouraging our members to continue to get involved at the local level. Then continuing to beg Mayor Swadley, somehow you guys got me onto the Planning Commission. I've really enjoyed that, learning more, and that comes with that involvement of being a part of downtown, etc. So this bug has been growing and growing and growing, which is where I came up with that kind of long-time listener, first-time caller. I felt that it was time to take the next step. I had voiced my interest in running for election this year, and when this position opened up, I dropped an application. And I'd love to take any questions you have.
All right. Are there any questions from city council members? Go ahead.
I'll start off because I know everybody's so shy.
You're not, apparently, right?
Well, I look around, everybody's like, I guess just a simple question. What is your vision for Stoughton going forward, and how will you try to be part of that vision being on city council?
Yeah, that's a great question to ask. Thinking about that, because one of the questions on there was issues. Are there any issues? How do you see that handling moving forward with that? Well, I wouldn't say that I see real issues. I see more of just maintaining the day-to-day, the high level of customer service that you all have, to working with the constituents to continue for all of Stoughton. And so don't want to get tied down to like one specific topic, but the things I've really enjoyed seeing this council work on, and especially down at the standing committees, is redoing a lot of the ordinances and working with the Community Affairs Council policy, working with the planning, working with Public Works, updating those ordinances, making sure that they fit with the times and with what vision we see ourselves moving, because as this town is growing, we want to make sure that we're having responsible growth and that that growth fits with what that vision is that we all want to see, and that's by making sure that our ordinances are up to date.
All right.
Jordan, what do you see as the most challenging issue facing the city today, and what would you see as steps toward rectifying that?
Great question, thank you. So for me, and I guess this would come from my experience, is that frustration of getting into government. How do you explain to constituents how our local government works, right? And you see it and everyone seems to understand national level politics, and then as you get farther and farther down the food chain, if you will, that's where we seem to have not as much understanding. And that's where I'd love to have more of that outreach and activities that I do with the VFW and the Legion and START, the Stoughton Area Resource Team, and being involved in those different groups and then working with those members to understand and to help them succeed. So as an example, had a constituent reach out, was concerned about a stop sign on the corner of Isham and Page Street. And so with the development that's going on south of Isham, really had seen an uptick in traffic of people that are traveling through there, you know, and was concerned because since there wasn't a stop sign, he had witnessed several almost crashes and nothing too bad with that. So said, hey, let's reach out to Chief Jenks and the Public Safety Committee and see if we can get on the agenda to make sure we have a chance to talk about that. Reached out, they'd already done a study, shared the study with us to say, hey, here's how we kind of saw that this isn't the first complaint we've heard about it. Said, you know, we still feel it's an issue, would love to get on the committee to be able to speak more about it in the future. And then through time, Chief Jinks reached out and said, you know what, we did agree that it's time for a stop sign at that location, and put one up, and then worked with Public Works to get a stop sign out there. And so I would say that that is the big thing, is to continue to work with constituents to understand how not only government works, but then for us to be there and to give that customer service to continue building forward.
All right. Alder Majewski.
Jordan, I want to back up again to a follow-up from Alder Hirsch. You were talking about, I guess, what is your vision, the future of this community, growth-wise?
Sure. And maybe you want to elaborate more on, like, how do I see Stoughton moving forward? We're going through a growth period. You know, that's how I see Stoughton. I love Stoughton because of the community that it is. You know, I'm not from this area. I come from a small town of Elm Grove in the Milwaukee area. You know, what's involvement in the city? How do you kind of put that level to it? For me, this has become my town. This is where I've grown my roots. This is where my friends are. These are the activities and the meetings that I'm a part of. What do I see? Is I see a lot of growth in this town. I see with the Walmart and the developments, you see new businesses coming, old businesses going. Some of the old businesses are growing into new areas. And how do we have that responsible growth as we move forward with that? And that's where I talk about making sure that our ordinances are up to date and continuing to work with those different groups to have a responsible amount of growth with Stoughton. So I do see us as a major pipeline to Madison, if you will, with the artery of 138 to 14, and 14 gets you basically right to downtown, that we are a suburb of that. But we are a good community, we are a strong community, and those are the types of areas that we want to continue to grow and grow responsibly. I feel that the lakes are going to make it so that we're not so much like Milwaukee area, where you can't really tell where Milwaukee ends and Wauwatosa starts, and where does Wauwatosa stop and Brookfield starts there, that it's all just suddenly you're at that street. We have very unique in Dane County where Sun Prairie's over here and there's space between the areas, and you can look at where Oregon is and we have 138 that separates us. And I think that's what makes us very unique. And how do we make sure that we're not ending up like that kind of area where we're just growing and growing and growing until we're all just one big municipality? Does that answer your question? a little bit? Close enough? Okay.
All right. Anybody else have questions? Okay, well, thank you for being here.
Yeah, this is a huge honor. I'm very appreciative of everyone's time, and we'll hopefully get to work with you again in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Good evening, Adrian. How you doing?
Hi, I'm doing well. I'm nervous, but I'll find my footing. Yeah, hi, I'm Adrienne Nino. I come to you tonight really excited about the potential to serve this community, to serve my district, and the community as a whole. A little bit of background, I come from a business development and science communication background about almost 20 years now. I'm currently the director of the Office of Research, Impact, and Outreach at the UW College of Engineering. So my job is to make highly technical and complex issues a little bit easier to understand. And that goes for industry, for companies, for policymakers, for the public, for federal funding agencies, and the like. So that's a skill that I use in every aspect of my life, and that I would be able to use here serving the community as well. I have served on the Sustainability Committee now for about 1.5 years. I have been the chair for, I believe, maybe 6 months. In the 1.5 years that I've served on the Sustainability Committee, I've gotten to really do a deep dive into all of the complexities that local governments face. And it's been really exhilarating and exciting. And I don't want to jump into answering questions yet, so I will hold off on some of my thoughts there. But I also am interested in joining council because assuming that the plan is supported by you all, and that we can start taking action as a city on the sustainability plan, I'm really familiar with the contents of the plan. Like I said, I've been working on it for 1.5 years alongside the other committee members. And I think that I would be a good sounding board and liaison on those types of issues as things come across our tables or desks. As I think you all may know, due to some community organizing and advocacy work back in early 2023, I know way too much about conditional use permits. I don't think most people should know that much about those, but you know, I think that's a good example of my commitment to the community, my commitment to serving our people, especially our children and other vulnerable populations. And lastly, I'll just say that also as a part of the work that I do professionally, I co-founded something called the Clean Energy Community Initiative. This was born out of collaboration across campus at UW to work throughout the state on community-centered clean energy projects. So basically, I'm working with tribal communities throughout the state. I'm working with utilities throughout the state. And we are engaging with communities and learning about their needs and their priorities and their challenges and trying to match solutions and funding opportunities to those communities. And we've had a lot of success. We have a 100% win rate. We've won 9 proposals or 9 grants just in the last year alone. So I think what I'm trying to say there is I'm a huge advocate for progress in that area and think that I could offer some of that knowledge and experience for our community as well.
All right. Thank you. You ready for questions?
I think so.
All right. Alderperson Hirsch, you had the first question. Do you remember what it was?
Of course. I had to take notes. No. Well, you know what's coming. What is your vision for Stoughton going forward?
No, in all seriousness, my vision is what success of this plan looks like. It's a community where parents and their children have the freedom to choose biking and walking to school, that they don't have to drive. It's a community in which our older population, so it's my understanding that this seat will serve on the Committee of Aging. And so I looked into some of their minutes, and in one of the recent meetings, they were talking about, how our housing shortage really actually affects our aging population. And sustainability initiatives are solutions to those problems. Compact mixed-use development is a solution to those problems. A community in which people can walk to amenities and socialize. I know from some of the work that I do with systems engineers who work in the medical field that, when our senior populations can age in place and stay socially tied to their communities, their cognitive functioning improves and or stays better longer. The cognitive decline is mitigated. So a community in which we are making sure that our development is serving all members of the community, especially those vulnerable populations, is really, really important to me. I have more to say about this because it's tied to a challenge. So I'll just hold off and wait for that other question.
All right, thank you. President Schumacher.
All right. What do you see as one of Stoughton's greatest challenges, and how would you go about solving that issue?
Yeah, so I think the discussion about the budget tonight regarding levy limits is, I think Mayor Swadley pointed this out. It's not just our challenge. This is a big challenge in Wisconsin specifically, but for a lot of local governments. Obviously, we want, fair and accountable property taxes for the public, right? But also the practical implications of those levy limits means that we are kind of putting ourselves into a long-term, we're giving ourselves long-term liabilities, right? But again, sustainability initiatives are solutions to these. We can increase revenues and attract businesses with the decisions that we make. I know that we've been looking, or that the city has been looking at zoning code amendments. And so things like, requiring less land for parking lots means that we can actually make the land more valuable, because instead of wasting space on parking lots, we can put a tax-paying business on that lot, or we can put housing on that lot and increase our revenues. Things like compact development, right? The more sprawled things are, the more roads we have to build, the more utility lines we have to build. That increases the cost of public services. So from a sustainability standpoint, we can make land use decisions that kind of help guard against those long-term liabilities of those levy limits.
All right, thank you. Alderperson Majewski.
Alder Hirsch kind of asked the question that I asked before. So I'm going to, I know I didn't ask this one for Jordan, but I'm going to throw a curve at you and ask you something different, if that's okay.
Is that okay?
It's
okay with me.
It's not, I don't want to make this unfair to you.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
So in your opinion, what is a city asset versus a city liability?
Oh, so I wasn't talking about liability from that standpoint. I was merely saying that when we are, not able to raise taxes, we diminish our ability to collect revenue that would pay for public services. And that's a long-term liability for the city from a budget standpoint. I think we all saw up there tonight that the plan that's set forth right now in the budget, I believe Mayor Swadley said by 2026, we're not going to be able to do that anymore. So not asset liability, like tangible asset liability.
So let me ask it a different way then. which do you think is a more valuable asset? An older neighborhood or a new neighborhood? To the
Oh.
city, in the city's viewpoint.
I think there are probably too many factors at play to make a judgment call on some arbitrary or hypothetical new neighborhood or old neighborhood. I will say that, you know, our currently in the city, our older neighborhoods tend to be a little bit more compact. There are some new developments where, you know, I've seen with the Magnolia Springs and some of the other new developments where there are the multi-family housing units where they have separate lots, but the kind of a duplex, right? But they own the land. They're not tenants. So those are new developments that are increasing the density a little bit in a different way. So it really depends on what the development actually is and what that looks like and what the density is, I would say. I wouldn't say one has more value over the other.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mayor, in fairness, we like to offer that same question to Jordan.
I agree.
Yep.
Are there any other questions?
Thank you very much.
I'll ask for a repeat if that's okay, Tom?
I didn't write it down.
Oh, no. It was,
Well, the first question I asked is what do you consider a liability and an asset to the community?
for sure. So of course, an asset has more worth to it than a liability does. So if we're looking at like police cars are an asset, liabilities would be, you know, how much tickets are we bringing in for a year? I'm not the for sure expert on that, how we're gonna term that, but I guess that's how I foresee it, as assets have more value to it.
Okay. And then my second was, which do you believe is more of an asset to the city? I think that's how I said it. I can't remember. An older neighborhood or a new neighborhood?
Mm-hmm. And if we're saying, I would have to say that the older ones do, and that's more of when you look at everything that goes with having those older properties, the older trees that have grown, the sidewalks, the larger chunks of land, I think that those have more value. If you're looking at more newer homes that are being built, some of those are going to maybe be shot up in value with that, of that, hey, this is this hot neighborhood and we're looking at $500,000 homes, and does that have a higher property tax value than the older home that last sold 10 years ago for $120,000? That, excuse me, there might be more property tax coming in from the higher valued property, of course, but I would say that the property or the value that the city has of what they've invested into those older properties definitely would make that outweigh it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both for taking the time to be here and putting yourself out there. Not everybody is willing to do that, and we appreciate both of you applying for the position. So at your seats, you should have a paper with your name on it, and you can select one, and Nicole Marie will go around and collect them. And then for those of you online, Sarah and Jonathan, hopefully you can email those to Candy, and then Nicole Marie will send her the results from the room, and we'll tally them up, and we'll see what happens. And then Candy, are you going to be in a position to swear them in tonight?
We all do.
Yes, I can do that.
Okay.
Yeah, you can stuff the ballot with your name on it.
So apparently there's actually a way to vote on our microphones here, but we haven't been trained to do that yet. So that's one thing that we can work on for the future. That came up today, and we're like, we don't want to make it any more confusing than it's going to be. But I guess we do have the technology to do that. But that's assuming that we have the right microphones at the right station. Okay. And Candy will let us know when she has the results. So apparently there's somewhere out in the technology world on her way.
So I do have the result, and your new alder for the vacant seat is Adrian Nino.
All right, congratulations. And how would you like us to handle the swearing in?
If she's ready, I can.
Okay,
I'm
you
ready
can
to
come
do
up
it.
to the podium, Adrian, and then Candy will give you the instructions. Can you
Okay.
see her? You should be on the TV there.
Oh, okay.
Adrian, if you could raise your right hand, please, and repeat after me. I, Adrian Nino,
I, Adrian Nino,
having been elected to the office of District 2 Alderperson,
having been elected to the office of District 2 Alderperson,
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the state
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin, and will faithfully and impartially discharge
faithfully and impartially discharge
the duties of said office to the best of my ability.
the duties that
Congratulations.
All right, we have a seat for you up here in the corner. Right up here, so, yeah.
Yeah, Patrick, we gotta shift seats.
Oh,
I
okay.
brought mine over.
You can switch microphones.
They're portable.
All
so go
right.
ahead.
All right. Gene will keep a good eye on you.
Exactly.
All right. All right. And while you're getting settled in, thanks again for applying, Jordan. We really appreciate it. It's nice to have options, and you did a great job.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Mayor. Congratulations.
Okay, let me get the next item up here. Okay. So the next item that we have here is the mayoral appointments, and I think, Adrian, you reviewed the committee assignments. Are you okay with them? The Board of Review, I believe, meets in the spring, so I think it's typically after the election, so more than likely you won't have a meeting for that unless you're reappointed in April. So the Commission on Aging, I want to say it's like the first Tuesday of the month. It's during the daytime. Is that okay for you? And then the other three are in the evening. The Finance Committee is right before the council meeting, so that's usually a good one. And then Public Works, when you guys meet, third Thursday, and Personnel kind of, and the Personnel Committee, sometimes it varies depending on what the topics are, but it's typically on Mondays.
okay.
And the Personnel Committee usually meets at the Stoughton Utilities, and Public Works meets at Public Works. And then the Commission on Aging, I believe they meet at the Senior Center. So thank you for accepting them. And then we do a reorganization after the election in the spring. And at that point, right before the election, I'll send out or right after the election, I'll send out like what you prefer to be on. So if there's something else that you'd want to do, you may have an opportunity in April to do it. And there's a whole process that goes along with that. Go ahead.
How does this impact Sustainability Committee?
So what we'll have to do is, well, we have to decide what's going to happen after tonight. So depending on that, if nothing else, you could still serve on there as a community member. And then we already have a council member, unless one of the council members wants to step down from there, but you guys can figure that out. But we'll work something out. You're always free to attend the meeting regardless as a citizen member, but I know it's a lot better to be on there as an acting member, so we can work through that.
For the Personnel Committee, we do have a meeting on the 20th, correct? Is that AJ? Yeah. So that one is one altered out of the schedule.
Yeah, no, really the way it works is if you can't make a meeting, if you can if it's a council meeting, let the clerk or myself know. If it's a committee meeting, let the department head or the chairperson know. Actually, it's helpful if you do both. That way we can make sure we have enough to conduct the meeting, so we have the quorum necessary. But if something comes up, we understand it. I mean, we have lives too, so we'll just play that by ear. Any other initial questions, or you want to make a statement or anything?
Well, thank you for electing me here tonight. I appreciate the vote of confidence. I guess my only other question would be, would it make sense for me to abstain from any decision making tonight, having not been privy to a lot of the conversations?
I'll leave that one up to the city attorney.
Okay.
I mean, it's technically a personal decision, but there would be
Okay.
nothing prohibiting you from
Okay.
taking a vote tonight.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you don't have a
Careful what you ask
conflict.
for. You may just get it.
Yeah, you don't have a conflict on the Sustainability Committee, even though you're the chair. You don't have any personal gain from it, right? Is that
Correct. There's not a legal conflict of interest there, so unless
Yeah.
there's like something you're willing to declare tonight that you have a financial interest in any of these items, there's no
I do
prohibition.
not.
no? And there'll be a whole bunch of paperwork for you to sign. We'll connect you with the HR department. And you'll have the appropriate paperwork, and we'll get you set up with technology and email and all that fun stuff as well.
Excellent. Okay, thank you.
Good. Excellent. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the mayor appointment of the committee assignments for the new alder. So I would entertain a motion for the resolution, and it might help those that are online if I share my screen so they can see it. But I would entertain a motion for Adrian to be on these committees.
Move to approve.
Motion by Majewski. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. That motion carries. Thank you. Next item is going to be the consent agenda. We have some minutes on there. The consent agenda is we put items on there that typically don't need a lot of discussion just for the sake of efficiency. So that's what the consent agenda is. I would entertain a motion to approve that.
Mayor,
Yes.
part of that consent agenda is if you read the minutes and things beforehand and you find something that you would like to have be discussed or changed, that's your opportunity to have that done before it goes into record.
Thank you for that. I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Schumacher. Is there a second?
Second?
Second by Majewski. Would anybody like anything on there voted on separately? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? None opposed, that motion carries. Takes us to old business. The first one is R-150 of 2024. So an R, that means resolution. So we have resolutions and we have ordinances, and I'll look at the city attorney to explain the differences.
So I guess the ordinances are the easy ones. Those are like, they have the effect of law. So you're writing the statutes, I guess, or the laws that the city's going to follow. The resolutions are declarations of policy or authorizing officials to take action or just approving permits or things like that. So for this one, we have a preliminary plat, so it's a resolution that would approve that subject to certain conditions.
Okay. So this one here is, it says resolution. In the body, it does say ordinance under the file number. Or am I on the wrong one here?
Mayor, which item number is it in the packet?
Item number 7. That's the zoning. That's ordinance 19. Oh, where is it? Maybe I skipped over it. I'm
I
not seeing
think
it.
150 is, oh God,
Where is it?
9.
151. Yeah, but that's actually the 019 is the actual ordinance. Hmm.
Resolution's 9.
It's 9?
It's a good thing we did.
Oh, okay. It's 9. That's in the actual ordinance. There it is. All right, I got it. Here it is. All right, so it's R-150 of 2024, and this one comes from the Plan Commission, and it was there again last night, Alderperson Caravello.
Microphone, Phil.
Sorry, my apologies. This is R-150 2024, resolution by the Common Council of the City of Stoughton conditionally approving the preliminary plat for Lot 2 and 3 and Outlot 1 of DSM 16445, located in Section 31, Town 6 North, Range 11 East, City of Stoughton, Dane County, Wisconsin. We'll move.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Butler. Alderperson Caravello.
And I'm actually, since there's been so much discussion and we are back with this again, if he doesn't mind, I can go to our planning director to get us on track of where we're at with this.
So this was originally with you guys at the last meeting. It was kicked back to Plan Commission. In my planner's report, essentially, it was asking to address number 3 and number 8 of the planner's report. So this is, I'm looking at this combined. Essentially, we're looking at the zoning and then the plat that's being approved with this with the zoning. It's a preliminary plat. So for discussion last night, and I have it outlined, and Rick, please feel free to jump in if you have anything that you'd like to add. So number 3 was dealing with the curb cuts on those north lots. You can see up on the board, they're in brown. On the north, we had originally asked for 5. Per the planning meeting on 11/11/2024, the plan board recommended against the 10 lots per the amended plat. The plan commission recommended that the areas permitted by right 5 driveway curb cuts, more than 5 curb cuts, and I put access points will require a site plan review. This is to be added to the developer agreement and recorded with the 9 lots. And then we have number 8. Are you guys okay if I paraphrase? Instead of just, okay. It's only certain sections. So so let's back up. Okay, so what was originally discussed and brought to plan here from Plan Commission is what I do is I write a planner's report. And all of those recommendations were asked for during the planner's report with 3 things that needed to be addressed. I went over all of the 13 plus recommendations at the last Common Council meeting that were motioned and approved, okay? So please feel free to, if you guys have a question, jump in, okay? During that meeting, you guys motioned that we take those 3 issues that were not addressed and take that back to Plan Commission. And I'm going to go over just the 3 issues. Now, if you'd like me to go over the entire planner's report and what we had approved at that original, we can. But essentially last night, what we discussed are the 3 issues that were sent back to Plan Commission. It was number 3 on my planner's report, and then number 8. What I did in the planner's report to make it easier to find is I actually put big blue arrows next to it so you can scroll through and find it easier. And I believe that is 9-1A in your packet, so it'd be easier to find. So the first issue that came up was number 3 that was kicked back to us, and that was those, I think, 9 lots that are in, is that a brown or yellow? I don't know. Yep, on the north end that were duplex lots. The issue that came back was originally was the reduction in curb cuts there. Per what the plan board recommended was, and that was what I just read, is essentially they are being guaranteed by right 5 curb cuts with the understanding if they bring back a site plan approval, they can have more curb cuts, but it has to have that done. And then we discussed logistics with Rick, and that is to be recorded with the developer agreement and against essentially those properties. Did I miss anything?
No, I think that accurately describes the Plan Commission action last night for that item.
Okay. So then the other issue was number 8 on the recommendations. This was the cul-de-sac that was essentially a dead end. So on Oak Ridge Way, so you can see down at the bottom, can you point it out for me? There's
I'm
a couple
trying to.
cul-de-sacs. Yeah, it's that where you see 13, it's that cul-de-sac right there, and there's only a portion. Tom, if you actually get in, I did make a screenshot so you can see the whole neighborhood to the south for your ass. So it's not going to be on there. It's only on my report. Sorry. But so after the discussion there, currently there's a proposed cul-de-sac on Oak Ridge Way. This area is very close to the maximum cul-de-sac length per ordinance. There are a number of recommendations that need to be met for street and safety impact if the proposed cul-de-sac stays this way and needs to be added to the development. So, and this is where I was asking to paraphrase, but it's all written out, those requirements. So the first one, A, is the developer needs to essentially provide a multi-path through that area that's also the lift station. There has to be a mechanism in place so that people don't drive down it thinking it's a roadway. And it has to be built to meet minimum requirements for a safety vehicle to be on. And that's actually spelled out in a longer paragraph on A. B is the developer will need to provide a snow removal plan for the area, working with DPW for approval. Essentially, they're looking at adding an area over by where that street goes, like the multi-path goes through, with no access points there so that they have a space to build up the snow so that they can then remove it. And this was, of course, working with Brett's department on that. And then the third one, C, was lot 13 over in that area. So you have the cul-de-sac, and directly next door you have lot 13, approximately 1.6 acres. It's an odd lot. I asked for additional changes. Essentially, they did come back and they said, per our new multifamily residential district, there's only going to be, I think it was 16 units that could be there by right per the new ordinance writing. So those were the recommendations that were given, and that had been kicked back to the plan. Does that make sense? Okay. It is.
Regina,
Because we're discussing this first, I had questions when we were, how did you come up with 16 versus 10? It seems like we're really compacting and making things. You're just gonna put words in my mouth.
You're having troubles. I'm helping you. I'm helping you.
Well, yeah, compacting, creating bigger density instead of, more neighborhoods where there's building more and bigger as opposed to looking at aesthetics and how it fits.
So there are requirements for aesthetic in the new multifamily residential district. They also have to meet stormwater regulations and parking regulations. We say 16 by right. Do we know that that site could actually even serve 16 because of circulation? I don't know. So that's the maximum that they can get by right without coming in for a conditional use permit and asking for additional.
So, but there's no criteria on size limit, height limits.
There are per ordinance. Those were all, I think we took that to the plan commission no less than 4 or 5 times before it was then brought to you guys at the last board. So, when?
Did we even get to that one?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
Yes. Which I had put together a PowerPoint showing you the different criteria, why we were increasing, not increasing, actually it's not increasing density. Do we want to talk about this one, or do we want to wait till
No,
it's on
I was
the-
just because
Okay.
we're voting on something that we hadn't voted on, the change in the ordinance. That's why I brought it
Right,
up.
and I know that was up for discussion. If you guys want to assign a different, so essentially what's happening, and this is going to be later on, which we talked about at the last common council meeting, but what was happening essentially in previous years is what we were doing is we were taking multifamily residential 10, multifamily residential 24, and then we were increasing density. So 10 and 24 is the density per acre, okay? And we were increasing density by putting an overlay district. And we started looking at this going like an overlay, the plan development overlay district. But instead of doing this, we need to set the criteria. And then during that PowerPoint, I showed examples of all the different ones that we have done in the last year. So instead of looking at it as we need to hit this minimum or maximum density, then we need to look at things like, can we make stormwater work? Can we make the parking work? What kind of design criteria do we have, which were all listed out? And there was a plethora of other things that we went into that were required on the new zoning code that was kind of left for interpretation in the previous. And for those that have worked with me, I don't like interpretation. I like those lines so I can go back and be like, these are the things that we need. These are the things that, so that's why we're looking at changing the multifamily residential. If you want to, you guys are more than welcome, instead of putting MR on here, to put MR24 or MR10 with the understanding that by the time that hopefully we get through the process in the next 2 meetings, we'll have a new zoning. So does that answer that question? Yeah. Yeah, I know it's a little odd. And yeah, and the plan commission reviewed it, I do believe 4 times, and then I did skip a meeting because of like we had something else going on, and then I got it on an upcoming, so I could have probably gotten it kicked sooner onto the common council. But I decided to put it on that really long meeting last week. So why not, right? So, yeah, so that's where we are with that. But again, you guys are more than welcome to assign like MR24 or MR10. I think from what I'm gathering with the Plan Commission is they want to move. And from the last.
And in the packet, there's some examples that the developers sketched up, and I have one on the board right now of what they could possibly do there. Obviously, they have to meet all the setback requirements and all the things that we talked about. But under this scenario up there now, you can see they have the maximum amount of multifamily on there, which would be the 16 units. So they have 2 buildings, 4 units on each building for a total of 16. And then you can also see the cul-de-sac that we were discussing and the service road going to the north there into the lift station area. And then there's a space on there for the snow removal as well. So those are the things that we talked about at the Plan Commission. We brought it to the council. We needed clarification as far as the specs on that, the road going to the north there. You know, we made it 12-foot wide. We have the right depth of material based on the engineer's recommendations. So that's the work that we've done since the last council meeting. And I think they have a couple examples. Here's the other example they had in there where they could actually do, potentially do, just one building with 16 units. But, as they get further into the design, that has to go through those approval processes. And there'll be conversations on those plans at the Plan Commission and possibly here as well, depending on what is submitted and what the process is looking like at that point.
Yeah, it depends. So if they do it by right, it would be, they have to meet all of the criteria of our ordinance and they could propose something. If they want to do above 16 units or anything not, then it has to go in for Plan Commission for conditional use.
Yeah, and I think the thing we're trying to stress tonight, this is just a preliminary plat. And maybe, Rick, you can describe what a preliminary plat is compared to a final plat.
Sure. So the preliminary plat is, it's a process created by statute and the city's ordinances where essentially the developer comes in and they show, I guess we would call it an initial concept of the development. And that allows everyone to provide feedback and to sort of establish conditions on the development on the plat on the front end. So if the preliminary plat is approved, they will have to come back for approval of a final plat. And the final plat can only be approved if it's consistent with the preliminary plat and the conditions that you impose on the preliminary plat. So this is step 1 of the platting process or the land division process. There's going to be another step that they won't be able to just record this. They will have to come back with a final plat, and Chris will be doing a more thorough review sort of the lots to make sure that they're complying with all the zoning requirements. That hasn't been done at the preliminary plat stage. So it's just a more thorough review at the final plat stage and to make sure it's consistent with the concept that you're approving here tonight. And just a comment on the zoning, I want to be careful because I want to keep these two things separate because they are separate, the zoning and the platting. But on the zoning issue with the MR, I think process-wise there could be 2 ways to do it. So if the council wants to approve MR10, I think that would be the way to go. Because essentially what's going to happen if the MR ordinance, like the new multifamily district ordinance gets approved, what it effectively is going to do, or legally is going to do, is remove those other MR10 and MR24 districts, and everything that's zoned MR10 or MR24 will then just be zoned the new MR district. So you could either zone this MR10, and if the new Chapter 78 multifamily residential district is approved, that would automatically rezone this to MR. Alternatively, what you could do is approve this zoning subject to or condition it upon the city adopting the new multi-family district. So there are, I guess, two ways to handle that. But again, I want to be careful because it's important we keep those two things separate so we don't get the concept stuff.
So right now, the way the motion is on the floor with a motion and a second, the assumption would be is that the zoning would be the MR10 and it would automatically change.
Right now, the motion is for the preliminary plat, I believe.
Okay.
So the motion has not been made for the zoning, but
Okay,
yeah.
that would be the next one.
Mhm.
So on the plat, it really doesn't matter, is what you're saying?
The zoning is not is not the action item on the floor right now.
Okay.
It's just the plat or
Okay.
the land division.
All right.
It's very confusing in one end because they do have to go hand in hand. For us to look at the preliminary plat, we have to make sure it's meeting minimum zoning requirements, but we were assigning the zoning requirement. So that's why I wrote the report the way that I did, covering both. But I mean, obviously Rick's absolutely right. They're two separate motions, but that's why I wrote the report the way that I did.
So the recommendation, again, last night from the Plan Commission was to approve the plat with including the three things that we just discussed. Any more conversation on that?
I just have,
Sure.
and if I'm recalling from all the kind of roundabout and confusion about what is what regarding this, I voted against this last night at planning due to my biggest concern was the access to what we're calling Road B and the number of curb cuts. I would like to see 5 or under. Just as this, that is, we're calling that a collector street, and I would like number of access to that collector street to a minimum.
And I think that's where we landed, right, Chris? We landed at 5.
We landed at 5 with the understanding they could come back for a site plan approval in this area for additional curb cuts. It was to be added to the developer, and this is, please correct me if I'm wrong, because this is where I get a little, we're adding it to the developer agreement and then putting essentially what would be a deed restriction against the property for those, like, so anything additional would need to go through approval.
Yeah, because the issue is STI is asking for the plat, but they're not necessarily the builders of the individual lot. So that's where it gets a little bit, confusing.
Right. So this would be running with the land, basically. So
Yeah.
whoever is developing those lots is going to have to come back for the site plan approval if it's more than the 5 curb cuts.
Right. But I think that if you approve the platting as it is, it really gives them direction that really what we want is the 5 curb cuts. They can come back and ask for it, but more than likely they're not going to get it, is my take on it. But I don't vote unless there's a tie vote. That's up to you guys. Alderperson Majewski and then Hirsch.
Well, we could really simplify this by just saying that you're going to get 5 curb cuts and that's it. And then, it's all up in front. They understand what they've got, what they're going to get, and less work for everybody. I mean, I don't like wiggle room, as Chris likes to have for black and whites. This is turning black and white, and you're turning it into a gray by adding you can always come back. You can always ask for more. But you have to go through review, but a lot simpler if we just say 5 curb cuts.
And that's what's in the resolution, right?
No,
No.
no,
No,
it's
no, no,
not
no.
spelled out. That's the problem I have.
The condition is 5 curb cuts. It could be
There you go.
Could be up to 9.
Could be. That's the rub.
So then it comes down, do you want to leave that language in there or do you want to remove it through an amendment?
I will leave that to Alder Carvello.
Can you tell us?
I'd be okay with adding it as an amendment that we stick
that a motion?
Sure, I'll make that a motion.
All right, there's a motion to make a 5 curb cuts. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Alderman Majewski. So an amendment basically takes the motion and makes a change and has to be acted on separately. I see Ray Hose here from STI. Is there something you want to speak to? You can push the button there.
So part of the reason I came and I spoke with Chris this afternoon a little bit, because I do think it sounds like, based on the 3 issues that we kind of had after the last meeting, this is really the only one that's still caused some confusion. And I think it sounds like, just based on my conversation, it's more of a miscommunication or misunderstanding. So I'm hoping maybe I can open the floor for some questions and kind of address what our intentions were. And, you know, based on the information we have from the traffic impact analysis, if you're concerned about anything exceeding 5 curb cuts, I guess my question is, what is that concern? Safety is obviously a concern of ours, and that's why we're kind of basing some of what we're asking for based on that TIA. But really, there was in yesterday's meeting, there was a 10th lot added. Now that 10th lot was a 10 lot with 5 curb cuts only. So that was a way for, we kind of looked at it as win-win-win. So the win on our end was our concern with our obligations in the development agreement from a tax revenue side. It makes it, we can have a price point which is attractive to the market, have the 5 curb cuts. We did a lot of work with MSA to figure out how we could arrange that and make it something that we could hit the market with and try to attract someone. As well as we had some housing. And housing is an issue that I think everyone's looking to address in Stoughton. So that's why I say kind of win-win-win, but I do acknowledge, sounds like there are additional concerns that maybe I'm just maybe got a blind spot for. So if you have
you're
something.
saying you're okay with the 5 curb cuts?
We are okay with the 5 curb cuts with that 10th lot that was discussed. And that's where I think the confusion came in.
Yeah, and that wasn't the recommendation. And I can tell you, as a
Understood.
plan commissioner, my concern is until we have final approval from Dane County on the 2 access points going to B, I'm not satisfied with the TIA, the traffic impact analysis, because depending on what ultimately the access points could be, right now you have 2 slated. What if that becomes 1?
So that's exactly why we thought leaving that gray area, as it was described earlier, might be appropriate, because then in the future we can come and say, this is the exact rendering that a builder wants to do. This is the TIA as to date at that point. So if it does change, we can review it with better information at that point in time, and we can make a good safety judgment at that point. We're providing this kind of assessment on safety and everything with the best information we have as of right now. I think it's objective, but to your point, that could change.
Right,
and we want to be flexible and make sure that we don't get too far down that line.
And quite
without
honestly,
being able to review.
Quite honestly, we should have had that report and that approval from Dane County before we had the plat.
I'd love to have that report from Dane County. I
mean,
think we're on the same page.
That's the conundrum here.
Yeah,
Is
understood.
the sequencing is not right. So that's why we're struggling with it. So right now, the recommendation is the 9 lots with the 5 curb cuts. It's a preliminary plat. Is the 9 lots something that can be discussed between the preliminary plat and the final plat?
That could be. So ultimately, it's going to be the council deciding, is the preliminary plat or is the final plat consistent with the preliminary plat? So if they come back with 10 lots, that's going to be a decision for the council to make, is if the 9 lots, 10 lots are consistent. If you wanted to, you could provide that sort of indication on the front end to say 5 curb cuts with 10 lots, but that's the decision for the council.
Sure, go ahead, Director Munz-Pritchard.
So, as I said last night when I was at the Plan Commission meeting, when we saw the 10 lots, originally when I saw the 10 lots, prior to getting a report in, I assumed that they had bumped it up to 10 lots to stick with the. That was the discussion I had with Ray Ho when he was like, "Why? You guys just wanted 5 curb cuts," and I was like, "Yeah." Just again, putting it in, I feel like a broken record for those who were at the Plan Commission, so I apologize ahead of time. With it moving to 10 lots, some of those lots cannot be subdivided with a 0 lot line because it doesn't meet the minimum street frontage per lot, which was something that I did bring to their attention. So just an FYI, I don't want to get too in the weeds with that, but something to consider for the developer. So
I think there's a couple questions for the council. Are you okay with right now on the floor, we have an amendment for the 5 curb cuts. Do you want to vote on that, or do you want to talk about going from 9 lots to 10, or is that a conversation you want to have later? You want to take care of the amendment?
Yeah, I guess again, why are we creating resolutions on the fly? This should have been done at Plan Commission. It shouldn't be us at 9 p.m. doing what should have been done at the Plan Commission with 9 lots versus 10 lots. And I know, Chris, you have tried to do that today, but that hasn't gone through the Plan Commission. I'm looking at this resolution, and I love your plan report, but all those steps needed to be in the resolution, like the number of curb cuts, the alleyway, or whatever you call it, the easement, all that's not there. So if I came back here 6 months ago, I will have no idea what we just approved unless it's actually tied to your report, and it's not, because this will be filed separately from all your reports.
can I speak on that? Sure. Because I agree. With the resolutions, this is something that I am new to, but in previous jobs, I would have my recommendations listed out 1 through 10, like what you're seeing in my planner's report, and then my signature at the bottom. And I've noticed I've been trying to look through and see how you guys did resolutions in the past with some of these, and I was trying to mimic what you guys have done here. If you guys are okay with it, I'd prefer to put these in, quite frankly.
I do, because I don't, this is where we get confused going backwards, because nothing is tied. This gets filed, you go back to the resolution, and we have no idea what it actually entails, what we did. So either this, I would like those 3 points that you said and the map be included in the resolution.
I absolutely can do that. I would prefer it, to be quite frank, but I also am trying to be aware of how you guys have historically done things and trying to keep it consistent.
Yeah.
If you're okay with me changing it, I will change
I'm about going
it.
forward and
Okay.
progressing, but that's
Yeah.
just me.
No, the entire report. It should be the entire report.
Yeah, I think it would be an exhibit or something.
Because right now what I have to do is I have to find the resolutions to then look up. Sometimes they're at 4 different meetings to find out what was passed. It would be a lot more convenient for everyone if these were tied directly to the resolution.
All right. So the motion on the floor right now is to amend it for the 5 curb cuts. Any more discussion on that?
No, I think vote on it.
Okay, all in favor, pardon me?
I said vote on it.
Okay, all in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? That motion carries. So then what happens is we go back to the resolution with the amendment added to it. And so that is what's on the floor right now. Alderperson Mayeski. Pardon me?
I'd like to add a second amendment.
Okay,
I'd like to amend this resolution, 150, to include the planner's report
okay.
as an addendum to this And map.
Okay.
Well, the maps are in the report.
Yeah.
Second by Alderperson Lagaki. Any discussion on that? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? That carries. So now we have the original resolution with the two amendments, the one for the 5 curb cuts and the one adding the planner's report with the map.
So clarification, so we have the planner's report on this, and there's 3 things that Chris greatly kind of outlined.
Yep.
One that we took care of for the First Amendment, which was the 5 curb cut. Do
Yep.
we also now have to add in that 12-foot alleyway as an amendment? And
They're in the planner's report.
I know, but that's not the resolution.
Now it is, it's amended to include the planner's report.
Okay, but,
So they're in there,
all right.
right? They're in there, right?
Yeah, that was as soon as we came out of the discussion, like with Brett and everybody else in the room, this was the first thing that you guys.
Yep.
that was the
Yes,
first
so I would agree that the conditions in the planner's report are part of the approval conditions at this.
So can that be amended in the resolution that all the recommendations from the Plan Commission and the planner's report are what we're actually voting on?
We just did that.
Yes, I
I
believe
know,
that.
but when you add it to it, doesn't necessarily mean that that's actually what we actually approved.
Yes.
We're approving the planner's report.
Yes,
We're
so
doing
I
the
believe,
planner's
Which
report.
the recommendations are to change those
Okay.
items.
so a vote now on the resolution would be the resolution plus the planner's, or the conditions in the planner's report.
Okay.
Everybody understand that? All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 And any opposed? None opposed, that motion carries. Okay, so that takes us to the ordinance. So that also came from the Plan Commission. It's ordinance 19 of 2024, Alderperson Caravello. And this is a second reading, I believe. It is a second reading. Go ahead. Yeah, they're a little out of order.
It's kind of wonky, but all of the ordinances are together, but the actual information is under 9. So just an FYI.
On the packet,
Ordinance 19 of 2024.
Number 7, I think.
an item
Yeah,
number?
It's item number 7. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Is there a second? Second by Wozniak Scanlon. Alderperson Caravello.
Following on the lead of the previous discussion, can I ask that we add the map to this ordinance as well? Are you guys okay with that? Okay. Most of this actually stayed the same. Rick, do you want to talk at all about any of this?
Yeah, nothing changed last night on the
No.
ordinance.
Yeah, the Plan Commission did not address any of the zoning classifications. We brought it up, but there was no discussion on it. I know there was discussion at the council on the 22nd about some of the zoning, the multifamily lots. So obviously there's a lot of discretion that the council has at the rezoning stage. Just ask that if there's a decision that, I guess, adverse to any of these zoning classifications, that there be some sort of justification provided by members of the council before voting against it or before approving that. So, but otherwise, I'm happy to answer any questions on the zoning or the best of my ability as far as like comprehensive plan consistency goes. But Is that no action from the plan commission last night on this?
So there was, just so everybody is aware, which I know I've talked about again, we do have in the CIP budget for an update to the comp plan next year and the year. So like we're doing it over a 2-year time period. With that said, I know there were questions on comp plan. We did have amendments made to this, which directly affected like other areas of the comp plan. When I saw this, I immediately sent it out to Rick. Rick wrote up his legal stuff that Rick does. And then I did send it all out to you, essentially like blind CC'd. So if you replied all, I purposely put it with Rick. So if you replied, Rick would be the one answering your questions in addition to myself. So.
And the one other thing I would add, excuse me, is just on the MR zoning. I think it would make sense to have a condition that it not go into effect until either the zoning ordinance amendment on the multifamily residential or to zone it as MR10. That way, if you do approve the other zoning ordinance changes to Chapter 78 in general, the zoning classification would change with that.
I think the last meeting, this ordinance only is for lot 1 and 2 and outlot 1, right? It's not for the whole plat?
It's for the whole plat. Because
Okay, so that's not clear at all, because up in the title, it says for plat lots 2 through 3 and outlot 1. It does not say for all the other lots on that. That's where, again, it's a little misleading when, when we make these decisions. According to this ordinance, it's only for lots 2 and 3 and outlot 1, not for lots 58, 57, or anything like that.
Section 2 says, subject to the conditions set forth in the below, Stoughton Trailers preliminary plat, lot 2, lot 3, outlot 1 of CSM. So that's the CSM that was done. That's referencing back. Approval of rezone as following: plan business. And this is where I was like, I would like to add the map in this because it is hard. So here's the problem I'm running into. Most of the time when we're talking, let's just pretend it's a normal zoning thing, right? I can tie it back to an address or I can tie it back to a tax parcel. This is still 3 tax parcels. So I'm not really sure how to describe that. So I referenced the CSM that it was done through and then the different lists of what the proposed zonings are. So again, without knowing, I would have added a map if I would have realized.
Please do.
Yes.
So they used to.
Yeah.
I mean, and so this, you're saying that the CSM 16445, which nobody knows what that really means.
Right.
So
if you look on the left side of the screen, that's the CSM that you guys approved in 2023. And that is the filing number that it falls to.
Okay, and so for this ordinance, we're only talking about lot 1. I mean, according to the title of this ordinance.
Well, it says
and because it says of CSM. So it's only lots 2 through 3 and outlot 1 of the CSM.
Yes.
Not and or within.
No, it says right here, it says the preliminary plat titled Stoughton Trailer Preliminary Plat for Lot 2, 3, and Outlot 1 of CSM 16445. So that's referencing Lot 2, 3, and Outlot. We're not rezoning Lot 1 because that's where Stoughton Trailers is physically sitting. And are approved to be rezoned is the following.
Right, that's what I'm trying to say.
I think what you have is the CSM has 3 lots, and the proposal has, I'm going to call them sublots.
So you want,
because there's more lots on that, but you're actually still referencing the CSM.
Right.
That's where the confusion is.
Right.
Yeah, because the CSM lots that are identified, the 2, 3, and outlot 1, like those are all the parcels surrounding the Stoughton Trailers site.
Yeah.
That are being rezoned.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
lot 3 is actually consists of part of that multi-family area in the Brown and some other land that's in there.
Okay, so that is in the map is really confusing, because,
Well, there you have 2 maps. So the CSM map is one map, and then the concept plan is another map. And where it's confusing is they both say lots on them,
right,
but we're still referring for this to the CSM, not to the concept.
okay. So
That's
that's because.
It's very
my-
confusing.
Right.
It is, but yeah.
And that's where trying to figure out which map we're actually talking about and which lots we're actually talking about when there's so many different lot numbers and everything.
Mhm.
That's just trying to figure it all out is been.
I know, I hate that we can't, it's not,
And what?
it's a chicken and egg thing, so.
Right, that's where, but it's not that one.
Right. It's not really the ones, there's no ones that actually tell you what is
I'm at
lot 1, lot
981.
2, lot 3.
This one? This one? Okay,
So, yeah, if you look above,
thank
you can see that that was the original CSM that's referenced, and we are showing that it's lot 2 and 3, and then out lot 1 that are being rezoned. Lot 1 is not being rezoned because that's Stoughton. And again, I didn't know I could put maps in. I will do it from now on. I would have preferred that because quite frankly, when we don't have tax parcels to tie things to, it's hard. I don't have legal descriptions necessarily to tie them to. I guess I could have put like 1 through 5 zone this, 1 through 8 zone this, but if you can't see the preliminary plat in front of you, they're just numbers that 3 years from now, nobody's going to know what it ties to.
No, what it was confusing is the other map that has lot numbers on it.
Yep.
And so it wasn't like really clear which map you're actually talking about and what lot you're actually.
All right, any other questions or clarifications needed? All right, so all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed?
No.
Okay, that motion does carry. And then that'll take us to item number 9, which is ordinance 20. Item, what's that? Oh, it's 8? Here we go. All right, so this one came from Public Works. It's the second read in ordinance number 20. Alderperson Mayeski.
This is ordinance 2024, amending section 78-702, parent 13 of the Stoughton Municipal Code relating to paving of access aprons and installation. Public Works has recommends approval of this 6-0, and I so move.
Is there a second? Second by Wozniak Scanlon. Alderperson Mayeski.
This I will let Brett talk to you about, because this is his pride and joy.
This has to do with driveway aprons and access. Chris and I had worked with this as a collective and brought this to the Public Works Committee. So essentially what we're looking to do is create consistency with the driveway aprons during construction and also new development. In the current ordinance, it basically says an impervious area, which that means a lot of different things. And so we want to create consistency and make that a concrete apron, which is our standard. That again creates that consistency with new development,
also with our reconstruction projects that we have on current. Pretty basic. Any questions on that?
One of the reasons for this also is that when we changed the ordinance regarding special assessments, there is as part of that there's discussion on driveway aprons, and there's a statement in there saying that if they're not up to the standards of the city, so this will help define that so that it's defendable when it has to be removed and replaced because it's not up to standards.
Any questions or comments on this one? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? That motion carries. All right, next item is R-152 of 2024. And I'll cue that up. And that one is coming from the Finance Committee.
All right, this is R-152, 2024, resolution of the Common Council for the adoption of the 2025 budget and tax levy. So moved.
Is there a second? Second by Alder Majewski. Alderperson Schumacher.
You've seen the presentations.
President Schumacher, I should say. Soon to be finance chair.
Right. That'd be weird. You won't have to listen to me as much anymore.
You're still going to have to do the historical reports.
True.
Go ahead.
We looked at presentations earlier by the mayor and filled in information by finance director. We went over the fiscal impact for those based on operations, debt service, and the total expenses, the mill rate, all of those. Now is the time for the questions on budget.
Are there any questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? That motion carries. Item number 11 is the utilities budget. And Utilities Committee, Alderperson Hirsch, can you introduce this one for us? It's number 11, R-153. Welcome to my world.
Microphone, Regina.
I'd do it all over again. R-153, 2024, authorizing and directing the proper city officials to approve the Stoughton Utilities 2025 budget and 5-year 2025 to 2029 capital improvement plan. Fiscal impact is $20,840,639, and I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Schumacher. Alderperson Hirsch.
We had great presentations last budget by Shannon and Director Weiss. You guys have anything more to say? Has anything changed in the last number of weeks?
No, nothing has changed since we came before you last meeting and gave our presentation. If you have any questions since then, we'd be happy to answer them, but there are no other changes.
All right. Any questions or comments from alders? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? That motion carries. All right, next item 12 is ordinance 21 of 2024. And that's a first reading, and that's coming from the Plan Commission. Alderperson Caravello, you want to introduce this one? Search the world over. Got in there? I did? Oh, say one. Oh. This one? Oh. This one? Okay, there it is.
So is this what I'm reading? Or
Well, it's
this
the
is
first
for
reading.
discussion?
It's for discussion, so it's the new zoning. You want to talk about that, or you want Chris to go?
I think we'll just let Chris handle it, so there is no ordinance at this time language to go with this yet. Oh, I don't want to read that.
So, what it is. Thank you. Sorry about that. Thanks, guys. So that's why the ordinance looks as big as it is. I know we talked about it, and I gave the PowerPoint presentation at the last meeting. Do you want me just to paraphrase stuff, or what would you like me to do here? Yes? Okay. Okay, so essentially what was happening is that historically, we have the multifamily 10 and 24, again, that's units per acre. And what we were doing is we were essentially approving those with a plan development overlay and allowing for increased density. During the last council meeting, sorry, force of habit there, I showed you a couple different examples. So we had, for instance, the Nygaard Street Departments, the 211 South Water Street, Nordic Bridge. There were a couple different ones that we saw. We're looking at essentially taking those densities and removing the densities. So we're looking at things in the ordinance such as stormwater, setback, minimum parking to make sure we're meeting those things, and not necessarily looking at the cookie cutter of 10 units, but looking at the site itself and what can actually fit on the site itself. So during the discussion, we talked about the difference between a permitted use and then conditional use, and then if it's not allowed. Again, what we were doing in the past, the flexibilities. Essentially what I did is we have the permitted use, which is principal land use by right. I looked at what was in those current ordinances and moved them over into what the MR10 and MR24 essentially was to create the new district. So those would be lower density residential, for example, solar energy systems. For some reason, those were in a totally different section, but they were permitted. And then home occupancy are examples. Conditional use permit, principal land use through a conditional use permit, higher density residentials, community gardens, which those are because there's like regulations in place. I actually took those regulations that were in a different spot and made them accessible in that particular district. And then we looked at permitted accessory uses and temporary uses. The only one that I believe that we added to conditional use permits, because we're seeing a need for it, and I think in areas with multifamily residential districts, is allowing for permitted use of daycare. So that could be integrated into the design, essentially. So now what you're looking at is when multifamilies come in, either for a permitted or conditional use permit, they have to meet building envelope, minimum parking requirements, the buffer yard, minimum landscape requirements. You guys updated pretty recently, like within the last 2 years or so. and so on, that's going to indicate how many units can actually be on the lot per acre. Additionally, we added facade design features. We had it written, I believe, so that they have to meet 3 of 5 suggested design features that have to be integrated into the design of that, which prior to that, I don't believe we had any. So that's a really fast overview. I know when I gave it the last time you guys were provided the information, I told you to know everybody loves reading ordinances, but I was like, please feel free to reach out if you have questions, see stuff that you want added. I hadn't heard any from anybody, but I also know I did vet this at Plan Commission. I think a minimum of four meetings where we went back and forth on different things in it. So with that said, Rick, okay.
Thank you. I just have one question. In 9D, you talk about distinct changes in texture and color of wall surfaces. Could you give me a definition for distinct?
I know I had one, and Tom, you're supposed to email me ahead of time so I can get these answers to you.
I couldn't.
I know. Well, I know what I did. So this is what I did is I went and pulled up other ordinances, and I know I explained this to you. And then I went through, like, when we were going through the process 5 months ago. And then so I looked at, like, okay, how did other people do this? And I think distinct was like, it was different, like facade changes and colors, so you're getting depth to it, if I'm remembering correctly.
But
wasn't that what it was?
I know that.
Yeah.
My concern was, I asked you at Planning Commission, would Highway 51 apartments that are on the outskirts, that are now
the
Nygaard apartments, would they meet that? And the consensus from Planning Commission was no. So, you know, I can envision someone, a developer, just changing the color of siding from one facade to the other. And I don't think that's what the intent of this is supposed to be.
So you're right. But with that said, they do have, that's one of two others.
I understand that. But so that's what brings me back to my question of distinct. Well, the intent is that that it was we were talking about material. It wasn't just textures. I think that's instead of
textures, maybe color or materials.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that was what you're getting at when you're saying textures. That's obviously, if you were just changing colors of, let's say, vinyl siding, that would not be a change in texture. I'm just asking. It's the distinct is the one clarification that may be needed.
So instead of textures, I would say materials. Can we change that to materials?
Yes.
Okay.
Brick, siding.
Well, materials is a change in materials is a change in material.
I know, but
building material.
It says distinct change in materials and color of wall surfaces is the whole.
Yeah.
And I would say that wall would be the outside wall.
Right.
Yeah.
Exterior walls. That was the only thing that
I can change that. I like that better.
That I caught. So,
I agree.
Thank you. I apologize for the last minute.
I was like, Tom.
You'll have 2 weeks to find more, because it'll be back for approval.
Tom, can you please me? I have no problem going over and
No, I understand.
This.
I understand that. I'm bad. I'm sorry.
It's fine. It's fine.
Apologize.
Alderperson Hirsch.
I like where you're going with this new ordinance change. The only thing that gives me kind of angst is not having a maximum number that you could have on an acre. That used to be the maximum number was either 10 or 24, and now if you have a really good site and they can do underground parking and all this, what to say that they can't have, 50 or long, I mean, because after and so to me, I didn't see anywhere in here that there's a height requirement that, unless I missed it.
There is a height
Yeah,
requirement.
it's 3 stories or 4 with a conditional
And then it
use.
shows how to measure that, because that was another thing that was up in the
Yeah,
air.
So 3 stories, but is there how much they can go underground for parking? I mean, I'm just trying to
It's
get,
not
if they go.
considered a story.
We're more worried
Yeah.
about,
Consider stories?
It's not considered a story.
Yeah.
I know. So
No,
I'm just trying to.
I mean, so in theory, if the person wanted to spend a bazillion
know.
dollars, they could potentially have a higher density residential. They would be spending so much money to get that to work. Quite frankly, I don't know that would be a bad development to have here, because from the outside, it would just look like a normal apartment with no outside parking.
yeah, and I think that one of the things Chris tried to do is she worked with Fire Chief Rip on the height, make sure that if we have a ladder that'll reach it.
Yeah.
So from a public safety perspective, I think you built in that height as the limitation.
Yes.
As far as the underground, you're only going to be able to build 3, maybe 4 stories with a conditional use, depending on the height.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to have parking requirements based on the number of units. So I think
And we have
you wouldn't build more underground than you would need, I guess.
I will say this, we have regulations on stormwater that I feel very comfortable here compared to other places I've worked. I think it's like, of course, Brett's on, but there's the percentage of runoff on those is significant. So I feel comfortable with this. I like what we were doing in the past was we were essentially like, we only want 24 units per acre, but we were putting, essentially planned developments over those and increasing them instead of changing the ordinance. And quite frankly, I'd rather change the ordinance.
And then this way, they have to meet all the setback requirements, and they can't use planned development as a way to avoid that.
And I'm going to tell you right now, from my perspectives, we've, I don't know the history like some of the previous people that were here on. We have to dig a lot of times to find out what was approved because everything was done through a plan development. I just would prefer to have it as black and white, and I think having these kind of.
I agree. That's why, for me, the little box of, I don't want to see 50 units on an acre when it used to only be 24. To me, that maybe the land could take it and there'd be enough parking, et cetera, but to me, that's a lot. That's a big density, not a lot of green space, unless that's also in there that it has to have equal a number of green space, and I couldn't really
Yeah, you would have
find
the
it on.
parkland dedication would be based on the number of units.
Yeah, but not, parkland versus concrete building and
No,
lots of
this-
surface.
It's in the setbacks and
Yeah, it's in the landscaping requirements that were the same as the previous landscaping requirements. I didn't go in and change any of those landscaping requirements. A lot of these requirements were ones that we were seeing in the previous ordinances. I just pushed them all together. So like they would have to meet all of the other design standards. But instead of just being like, well, I guess we'll allow this flexibility, we're seeing what they can do on the lot. And you're right. If you have a developer with a lot of money, they could come in and put, I can't imagine 50 units. I don't know how you would do that in an acre. But we had a previous developer in one of my other communities that spent, I don't even want to know how much money putting underground tanks to deal with the runoff. But like, that is so expensive. I can't even imagine. And I don't like the quality of product that you're getting if you're getting a developer that's willing to spend that amount of money on. I can't even imagine. So I just like, those are the things to keep in mind is like, yeah, we're removing the minimum, acreage, but like, unit per acre, but they have to meet we're actually going to be seeing what they can produce from that site instead of that number of like, we might have sites that are 1 acre, but they might have too much, wetland on it that even 10 unit or 4 might be too much. You just don't know. And I think that's where we want to see it going that way.
I would say that if anybody else has any other concerns, if you want to just reach out to Chris between now and the next meeting. And if there's enough of them, we don't necessarily, this is a first reading, we don't have to approve it right away if it's not ready. But we're just trying to get to a point where we have some consistency. And right now, it doesn't feel like we have that under our current processes. I think we're all trying to head in the same direction. If you don't think we're quite there yet on a few of the specifics, feel free to reach out to her and we'll try to work through those between now and the next meeting. Are you ready to move on to the next item? All right, let's do it. The next one is R154, and this is coming from the Finance Committee.
This is R154 of 2024, resolution for a declaration of official intent number 01-2025. So moved.
Here a second? Second by Wozniak Scanlon. President Schumacher.
This is going along with Eller's recommendation and the Treasury Department recommending that these declarations be made at budget adoption time. Regarding, these are debt proceeds.
All right, anything you want to add, Director Ellinger?
This basically allows us to, with this intent on file with the bond council, we can then recoup any expenses that we paid out before the debt issue. We usually issue debt approximately May, June, so we can go all the way back to, in this case, November 12th and recapture any costs and use bond proceeds for that.
All right, any questions or comments on that? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 And any opposed? None opposed, that motion carries. Next one is also coming from Finance.
This is R155 2024. This is a resolution for a conflict waiver regarding offer to purchase property at 600 South 4th Street. So moved.
Here a second?
Second?
Second by Alder Butler. President Schumacher.
I'll have Attorney Manthe go over this one.
Yes, so the city did receive an offer to purchase 600 South 4th Street. That entity was previously represented by my firm. So in order for me to represent the city, we would need a conflict waiver from both entities. They have already signed a conflict waiver, so this would just allow me to represent the city in this capacity for this transaction. We've done these for similar things.
Any questions or comments on this one? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? None opposed, that motion carries. Next one is a first reading on ordinance 22. This is coming out of public safety. Alderperson Legacki.
This is ordinance number 22 of 2024 to amend section 70-221 that stops are required at certain intersections. It has been a while since we met, but really we have added stops after a constituent contacted and let us know their concern about Moline. Police department went out, took a good look at it, agreed, and can't believe we all missed it for that long. And so this is for stop at those 4 places in Moline. So move.
That's actually a first reading.
Okay, I'll move it next time.
And I can put some examples up. We just, in the last couple days, we got some drone shots. So we can put these in the packet for next time so you know exactly what we're talking about. But here's one example right here. And there's some others. Let's see.
The resolution reads that they would be on Hanson, Matthew Way, on Harold Court, on Ann Drive, at.
So they all look like they're like T intersections. This one's a little bit more elaborate, but we'll throw these pictures in here and we'll try to label them somehow so you know which one's which. Like I said, I just got these and I had asked them for some other pictures, and while they were flying the drone, they went ahead and did these as well. So we'll put these in the packet for the next meeting if you find that helpful. And then we can maybe sketch in exactly where the stop signs are. I can work with Chief Jenks on that. Okay, so that one will be back in a couple weeks. So we're going to item number 16. And this is R156 2024. This is the sustainability plan. Let's see who's on the committee. A couple of you are. Who wants to introduce this one? Do you guys want to fight over it, or how you want to do this?
Would it be appropriate to have Adrian?
It would be appropriate.
Let's have Adrian do it.
All right, let's find it for her.
Give it a try.
All right, you'll do fine. You just want to read it and then say so moved after it somehow.
Okay.
And I don't know if I...
This is R156 2024 resolution by the Common Council of the City of Stoughton to approve the sustainability plan. So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Lagaki. And then Alderperson Eno, you want to kind of walk us through a summary? I know you've been here and presented it, so that was very helpful.
I have notes somewhere. Well, yeah, I suppose I hope you're all aware after the presentations how comprehensive the community engagement and community input was on this plan, how comprehensive the entire process was. I think some key points are that there's no action too small, and that a lot of small actions will, come together to make good changes. The plan also is flexible, providing some guideposts for the future. It's not policy itself, but it's a guide for policy and other decisions for the city. I think that's a really key point. Another thing I want to point out is that the flexibility also includes flexibility on timelines. So the phase indicators are, ranges of time in which we would anticipate action would be initiated. So phase 1 is that action would hopefully be initiated in 0 to 3 years following the plan's approval. So there's nothing too prescriptive or restrictive in this plan, but like I said, it's providing some guide for the future. I guess I'll say one last thing, which is that, despite any uncertainty on, any regulations at a federal level that might change that doesn't really matter. This plan is more important now than ever, I think. And so, yeah, I mean, the impacts are big and all encompassing. Jobs, local jobs, would be impacted. Any action that you take, to make these changes, have pervasive impact. See, I need my notes, you guys.
Pretty good.
I had a whole thing.
And I think the way we see it as a staff, and Adrian was kind enough to go through it with us, is really the first step for us will be to identify and prioritize kind of some of the low-hanging fruit. Some of them we've already done, and you guys have already approved ARPA money for that implementation. But we'll go through and really outline those things that we think we can get done in the first 1 to 3 years. And in the packet, you'll see there's a few different versions. One is the nice, beautiful document, and the other ones are more like working documents to make it easier for us to implement it. Did you find your stuff?
I did.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think I've mentioned this before, but just a review that it covers energy, water, transportation, waste, land use, and community health, all in alignment with the Green Tier Legacy Communities, which is that voluntary, non-regulatory sort of membership community of practice through the DNR. Really, that is a partner that the city can really leverage for support to set and track metrics, all kinds of things. So that's a really key piece of this that will need to sort of be pursued in the near term. And we can have a representative come speak to council on that as well. But yeah, I guess the other points I had to say about why the plan is more important now than ever, that, a lot of these solutions, like I said in the interview process earlier tonight, sort of do impact some of those long-term levy limit tax revenue implications. These can help mitigate extreme weather impacts, protect the ecosystems that we rely on, improve our health outcomes, and, really, truly, I believe, strengthen our local economy over time.
All right. Any questions or comments on the plan? I know there's a lot there. You guys have had it for a while, but it's kind of hard to go through each and every page and remember what's on it. Alderperson Hirsch.
No, I just want to commend the Sustainability Committee and CACP for guiding this and putting it together. It was a great endeavor, and I think you came up with a really good plan in the end. My only concern is that there is no project manager. I mean, and when I was looking through it, it was like, the mayor will do this, the mayor will do that. I'm like, that's not a sustainable solution. And he wears many hats. And so I know we just passed the budget and there's no money, but maybe with some of the extra ARPA funds, you can hire a sustainability contractor for a few years to really kind of spearhead. I'm just throwing this out there.
Well, one of the things we've been hoping for is that we could partner with other communities, because this isn't just a Stoughton issue. And there was money in the last state budget for innovation incentive. I'm not so sure all the rules have been laid out yet for that, but we think there might be some opportunity there to share somebody with our neighboring communities, because we all are trying to work on this issue together. So once things are a little bit clearer on what that looks like, because the state would be willing to pick up 25% of the cost for 3 years if we could show a 10% savings with partnering with other communities or nonprofits. So if you found 2 or 3 other communities, you'd be splitting that, 3 or 4 ways at 25% or less. That makes it a lot more palatable. But if we had somebody that wants to implement a best practice in here, and it's the same best practice for all the communities, they only have to draft that once, and they could shoot it out to each of us and create those efficiencies. But yeah, long-term, ideally, we'd love to have a sustainability coordinator. We'd love to have a DEI coordinator. We'd love to have more people in other departments as well. So, you know, if we get to the point where something gives at the state level, or if we get to the point where we are going to the taxpayers and asking them to exceed our spending limits, these are the types of positions that, you know, we would want to be discussing as long as we're going to be asking the community for more money. And then ultimately the community will decide whether or not they're willing to fund additional positions. Because it's not like we have other positions we'd eliminate in order to, you know, add a position. It's just not really an option for us right now. Yeah, but we still have to pay for it. So, but we'll that's part of the initiatives, and one of the recommendations is to ultimately hire somebody. So, that'll be something that we're working on. But it's a point well taken, because it's not going to happen by itself, although we do a tremendous amount of work. And if we get a light agenda one of these nights, I actually have a presentation that I did at an event recently that I can do in about 8.5 minutes. And I think it'll give you a good understanding, at least where we are right now and where we can go with it with the addition of the plan. President Schumacher.
I wanted to acknowledge the efforts of the Sustainability Committee, the expertise and the enthusiasm that they brought to putting this plan together. It's really if you read the big plan with all the pages in it, it's a very, very thorough look at a very holistic view of how we could incorporate it into the city's functioning. And the goal is to ultimately get there. But as we discussed in that committee, that we've got some work to do on getting the 0 to 3 year goals looked at, and then looking at where we can get accountability and feedback also on that plan.
Yeah, and I would add, there's some members that have been on the committee since its inception over 3 years ago. That's quite a commitment. I mean, I think, a little naive when I thought we'd crank this thing out in a year or less. And they stuck with it, so I appreciate it, and I'm trying to figure out a way to recognize them. I think that would be a good thing to do. Yeah. So that's something that we can talk about. Any questions or comments on the plan? And I look at this as being somewhat fluid as well. So if there's something that we need to tweak or whatever, it's a guide we can always add and you know, modify. Technology changes too. That's going to have an impact on it. Otherwise, all in favor of the plan, say aye.
Aye.
And anybody opposed? None opposed. That motion carries. All right, we're getting there. Item 17 is the R157 of 2024. This one came out of Stoughton Utilities. I know there's collaboration. Alderperson Hirsch.
Added on. Authorizing and directing the proper city officials to approve the water tower license agreement for communications attachment between Stoughton Utilities and the city of Stoughton, Wisconsin. So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alder Majewski. Alderperson Hirsch.
I'm just gonna this one over to Director Weiss.
I think, yeah, Director Weiss and Chief Rip worked on this one together. Go ahead.
So this did go before the Utilities Committee in December of '23. It was unanimously approved. Since then, we've been working with Chief Rip on a variety of different things. Ultimately, how this came about was he came to me, said that there was some facilities that they wanted to add to the water tower to be able better to communicate, and I'm sure he can enlighten you better about how this radio communication will ultimately work. We do have an agreement with Danecom at this point in time for the racetrack road tower. He would like to add stuff to the first water tower, and so to do that, we need an agreement basically in place to lay out how that's going to go. So we worked with a utility attorney and ultimately the city attorney and kind of worked through a variety of different things. The utilities committee did have a concern about whether the potential of terminating this lease early. So we did put a provision in there to ultimately be able to terminate that lease early. But basically, this is the identical standard document that we have with Danecom. If some other third party came forward and wanted to say co-locate on our water tower, we would use basically the same agreement as well.
All right, thank you. Anything you want to add, Chief Rip?
So this is on the First Seth Road water tower. We have the repeaters for the fire department, police department, as well as utilities. And this just, we've had the stuff there. This is actually formalizing, getting the agreement that it's all squared away. And then adding there's a microwave link that's connecting the water towers to the police department and will eventually into Dane County so that our radio communication is a little all the way around. Make life a little better, get old antiquated equipment replaced within the dispatch centers as well.
All right, any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? That motion carries. Item 18 is coming from Council President Schumacher.
A while back, we had discussed possibly adding in a high school representative. I know we just kind of mused about it. I believe, I don't remember if it was in a full council meeting or a committee of the whole or something like that. While I was on school board, of course, there was a high school representative in there, and it was always sort of a two-way street where we got to see the perspectives of, or we got to see what our policy effects were on what the student population was and what their viewpoints were about it. Some of the students were more verbose than others were about their opinions on things, but we think it was valuable in there in that they both got to state their opinions about policies that were affecting them, and also they got to learn a little bit about how, not government, but I mean how governance works or doesn't work. So I think that we could extend that to this body where they would be able to get a view of city governance, give them a little bit of experience into how things either work or don't work here in the chamber. So I've had a conversation already with Superintendent Teaser and Principal Gemolo. They're both very excited about this idea, and Principal Gemolo has a mental list of students that she would already recommend for such a thing. So I would like to have CACP committee look at getting the specific language in there that would allow for this student to be placed. I think it would be nice if it would happen after their winter break, so that they would have the half the school year to do that. And then after that half of a school year, we can reevaluate how we think that appointment has gone, what they learned from it, what we learned.
All right, we'll open it up. Alderperson Lagaki.
Love the idea. There's a student on the library board, and it's been invaluable. And I'm a former high school teacher. This really is a formative time. Is there any consideration or discussion of having this be a service learning project and is their service learning coordinator at the high school. I bet you CACP would love to partner around service learning.
Unfamiliar with what is service learning mean?
Wonderful, wonderful. Many high schools are doing service learning. I did service learning back when I was still teaching at Stritch more than 20 years ago. It is not a new idea. It's basically taking experiential learning and coming into communities and having realistic goals, realistic vision, and involvement. So I am hoping our high school has service learning. I'd like to just add that language, but I can't speak for all of CACP, but we're doing ordinances. We're reading through policies. So we would welcome that. And I hope that, I like the idea of trying to bring in somebody for second semester or even maybe planning for the next school year, but it would be nice if it were a partnership and service learning would be the gateway.
I think that one might be okay so that then they would be able to have a full school year in order to do that. Where I guess I'm looking, if we can fit that in, that they would have the half a school year, and then that would kind of give us a little bit of a teaser, I suppose, to figure out whether or not this is something that I think that we can. I mean, I think we can work with that, but would give us a little bit of a trial period in it, and then really set that up, like you say, with service learning in there for a full school year for someone.
All right, we'll get to work. Maybe you can see whether or not they have that ability to do the service learning there. If not, then we'll have to do some research, and maybe, Gene, you can help me learn more about how that works, and then we can get going on this at the next CACP meeting. Anybody else have any thoughts?
So this student is only for CACP, being on like.
This would be a full council, but non-voting full council, no closed.
Yeah, it would just be somebody that could be at the table that could provide a different perspective.
There's a student interested.
She said there's many that would be like anxious.
Oh, really? Cool.
All right, and I see Alderperson Abel has her virtual hand up.
Yeah, I would just add, I was one of those students back in high school, and it ended up being for my high school, it was mandated that it was student council president who had to serve on the school board in a similar role. So I think there's certainly opportunities within the student leadership board also. So.
All right, thank you for sharing that. Anybody else? Okay, we'll get to it. Okay, we have two more items that have the possibility to go into closed session. But before we do, I think we want to give an overview of where we're at on both of these projects. And the first one is Kettle Park West Phase 2 Developers Agreement. And I think I have the most recent email here I can throw on the screen. And Connor, you can come on up and kind of tell us where you're at. I don't know if you've had conversations with Chris or Rick about this. I was out of the office today, so I'm not really sure where we're at, but maybe you can kind of let us know what the request is.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to. So first off, thanks for having us and sticking with. I know it's a loaded agenda tonight. Welcome, Adrian, as well. So we'd like to talk to you this evening regarding the deed restricted lots. We received a great deal of feedback from staff as a result of the previous council meeting, and the essence of the feedback is reiterating the importance that a driveway relocation agreement is reached for the adjoining property along Highway 138 south of the Kettle Park West development. We heard that loud and clear, and we have some alternatives that we'd like to discuss that we feel may create a win-win-win for everyone here to move Kettle Park West development forward, but also maintain that importance of that agreement forward. So to start, I think it's important to establish the reason we're even having this discussion here tonight. And it's that the residential portion of Kettle Park West has moved quicker than we all anticipated. When that provision in the developers agreement was originally negotiated, I believe in the 2019-20 timeframe, it read the connection to State Highway 138 needed to be made for that deed restriction to be released on those lots. I believe the TID project plan originally planned that to occur in 2026, which now may be extended even further. So the essence is home construction's moved through quicker than we thought. We didn't foresee this as something we needing to address in 2024, but the result is more homes being constructed and more increment being generated for the TID in a quicker time frame than we anticipated. We feel that's a good thing, but it does raise the issue of what we need to address on the deed restricted lot. So we were tasked since the October 22nd meeting to come back to you and find an alternative to consider addressing for these deed restricted lots. And we were hoping to get your feedback on two potential alternatives. And the first of which, both share the same premise. It's essentially shifting the restriction of the current 8 lots to alternate properties within Kettle Park West. And we showed two alternatives that we'd really like your feedback.
And currently it's where it says block 3 on the map, right?
Correct.
So it's hard to see that, but it's
correct. There's 8 of them. Yep, those are the currently deed restricted lots. So what we were considering as alternative one would be to shift the deed restriction to encompass all of the phase 3 lots. This is the next phase that we'd be planning to have under construction in 2025. We need to deliver that to stay current with our home builders inventory projections. Now, the obvious comment is, aren't those lots already restricted? The answer is, it'd be subject to the developers agreement, and you could make the argument that they already are restricted. But we would be proposing to take a belt vendors approach that essentially, if all those improvements were to be installed, building permits still wouldn't be able to be issued until such time an agreement is reached to relocate the driveway that is mutually acceptable to all parties. So we could put in all the improvements, have lots ready to sell, but if that agreement isn't acceptable to the city and in place, building permits wouldn't still be allowed. We feel it's appropriate to address it in that phase simply because it's directly tied to that connection going down to State Highway 138, and it's in that same project area. But we did present an alternative 2 here for feedback and consideration that essentially shifts and swaps the 8 lots that are currently restricted for a separate 8 lots within the development. And the premise for both alternatives is the same. It essentially allows home construction to continue on lots that Lennar would love to be able to build on. They're currently running out of inventory, and they're eager to get going on these to build homes, and there would be benefits to the TID starting those homes as well early. If they were delivered in 2025 using average value of, say, $500,000 on those, that's $4 million of value that would be delivered in 2025, assessed in 2026, and on generated increment in 2027. So any further delay shifts that project out a little bit further as well. So the intent is allow construction to start on those 8 homes while preserving the structure that a deed restriction would be in place on alternate properties to motivate that driveway agreement gets reached in a suitable
Anything else you wanted to cover?
That was essentially it, just looking for feedback on whether these alternatives are reasonable to explore further.
So I guess
Go
sorry.
ahead.
At this point, if you have any questions for Connor, you're more than welcome to ask them. But I think discussion among the council about potential negotiation we should do in closed session.
Go ahead.
During the last meeting, you said that you were meeting with the owner, I thought, of that house to try to negotiate that driveway. I'm assuming that it didn't go well. That's why you're here trying to come up with a different alternative, or where is that in the process?
Actually, my coworker, the other Connor, we're interchangeable at this point, but he did have a discussion with the landowner. It was a brief discussion that he was willing to have those discussions and negotiate an agreement. But as we all know, it's the time frame to get that agreement in place. Even if it's a developer's agreement that we work on with you guys, it doesn't take a week. It takes months to do so. And Lennar would like to break ground on these. So we understand the importance to get it in place, but it's not a solution that an agreement that would be signed in a time frame that would allow it. So the premise is to shift the restriction to alternate properties that would allow sufficient time to negotiate such.
Any other questions? All right, thanks for waiting it out. Appreciate you being here, and if we have any follow-up, probably hear from Rick.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate the time, especially in a long agenda like this. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so the other group that is here, you guys can come on up and you can introduce yourself. So we have a possibility to go into closed session to talk about an offer to purchase on 600 South 4th Street. And these guys are here representing the potential buyers to kind of let us know who they are and what their plans are. And then we'll deliberate in closed session about the specifics of the offer. We couldn't even internally discuss the offer until you all had approved that waiver agreement earlier tonight. So I'm just as anxious as you are to get into closed session and hear what the city attorney has to say about it. Go ahead, fellas.
Well, good evening, or good morning almost. My name is Nels Forty. I'm the one that's interested in purchasing the building. And we do work with the law firm Stafford that we only use for trademark, so there's really no conflict, but the waiver is important. I too am nervous. Congratulations. So I'm going to give you a little brief understanding of who I am and I am here. I'd like to buy the building, but ultimately I'd like to move my business into that building, and that's Yahara Bay Distillers. Yahara Bay is, well, it's a distillery that was founded by my family. We have ties to Stoughton, 4th generation. My great-grandfather was a pastor. My grandparent met here and got married and honeymooned up at Sunnyside. And my parents and my brother live up in that area. My sister lives on 4th Street and her 2 kids. I do live in Sun Prairie, but all things willing, I will hopefully relocate to Stoughton. My intention is to move Yahara Bay to Stoughton. This property specifically is a great location. It's on the Yahara River, and as a brand home, it fits really well. And so, as you can imagine, that would benefit the brand. But ultimately, my goal is also to benefit the community, because I know that moving a business into Stoughton and expecting the community to just welcome us is kind of silly. And so I put a lot of thought into how I would approach the community as I move the business. And whether it be collaborations with existing businesses or supportive goods and services. ultimately, I intend to invest in the business and the property. For you and the city is going to generate tax revenue, which I know is important right now, and give you an opportunity to move, find a new home for utilities, which I know is also something that's been in discussion. I've put thought into the food bank. My intention would be to allow them to stay. Of course, we've talked a little bit about utilities and EMS and how long they could stay if I were to purchase the building. Time frame for moving my business, but also not forcing anyone out of their current home. And the food bank, especially because it supports the community, I would commit to maintaining a place for them, even after further development and the departure of the utilities and the EMS. Because being a part of Stoughton, as I said, my family, I'm fourth generation. Well, I'm third generation. My kids would be fourth. My nephews are fourth. To become part of the community would be really important to me. My grandparents are resting at Riverside. And I think there are a lot of ways that Yahara Bay and my family could become an integral, a part and parcel to Stoughton, and bring a lot of value, I guess, to Stoughton. We're a small business, but we are a business that brings sort of a destination mindset, and that would mean tourism dollars, right? So there's a lot of different things to consider when thinking about whether or not to sell the building. There's a lot of benefit, and I'm sure you can find some negatives and some challenges, but I think all challenges can be overcome. And I hope you'll give some serious consideration, and please do ask any questions you may have. I brought Bryant here. He's probably a better speaker, a public speaker than me, but he's also very well versed in. I mean, he's a real estate agent, and he has just been wonderful to work with, and he'll have more technical things that he. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll just do a quick intro. I'm Bryant Meyer with Oak Brook Corporation, so commercial broker agent of the firm here in Madison. I've been working with Nels on what is a little bit of a journey to this point. We have explored a lot of alternatives, multiple being in the community already. So this would be really candidly venture number 3 that we've pursued. We have pursued previous Stoughton utility buildings, Stoughton trailer buildings, excuse me, as well as former manufacturing buildings here in Stoughton. So Nell spoke to as little to or at length about why it's important for him to be here. I'm here to support, represent Nell's, drafted the offer to purchase. There's a lot of consideration that went into each of the business terms within that agreement itself. It's meant to solicit feedback as a starting point for future conversations. There are a lot of pieces in motion, as Nell's kind of referenced, regarding EMS and Stoughton Utilities. The goal is to try and foster a partnership amongst both the city as a seller, but those 2 other organizations, and Nels himself, to find something that works for everybody. Any specific questions related to that offer, I'd be happy to address. I would just take a moment to speak on behalf of him as well. Nels is a very great business owner. Obviously, he is in the process of acquiring from his predecessors, his parents. It's family business. You see that when you meet with him. You see it when you experience the product as well. I'm a customer of Nels as well. So it would be adding a great benefit both for adding jobs to the community, adding a retail venue to the community, adding tourism dollars to the community. The location is interesting in that it's urban, but yet still serves a purpose for manufacturing. The building is truly warehouse, office, and EMS today. Most of those uses don't work for Nels, candidly. He's none of those things, with short of a little bit of office and some warehousing. Primary function is manufacturing, and then retail will come later. So just to give you a high-level overview, happy to answer any questions you guys might have.
Go ahead.
Nels, what's the current output capacity of your distillery?
So we are a craft distillery. We do contract work, so we produce products for other brand owners, and then we're also an importer. So we import ultra premium spirits from around the world for a number of retail partners we have around the country, contribute to 14 states. We are around 30,000 proof gallons bottled and sold per year. We have 11 full-time employees and 2 part-time right now. With the purchase of a building, expanding space, we need more square footage. We've had to shrink our retail space in our current space right now to take it over by manufacturing. With added space, I intend to invest in more equipment and to expand on our contract work. So I'd be looking at adding a few full-time employees to include probably 2 to 3 on the manufacturing side and 1 for administrative. So sort of a mix between entry-level, lower skill, and then professional. And that would probably at least double our output.
All right, and then more of a technical question for your testing, your analytical testing for that. Are those out to third party labs, or do you do that within your own facility?
So we, by law, as you would imagine, we're heavily regulated. We do have to test for certain things, but I know that wastewater is a concern, especially being right next to the river. And I can share with you the more detailed technical things as far as what our production is and what it isn't, because that'll give you a better idea how it might impact wastewater. That could be a little bit lengthy, and how much I want to disclose in a public forum could also, be a factor here. But I'm absolutely willing to share what kind of considerations we may or may not have.
All right, well, I'm happy to listen because I work in active pharmaceutical ingredients, so I understand heavily regulated industries.
Anything else?
No, I'm done with technical stuff.
Alderperson Sherlucky, and then Alderperson Abel will follow Sherlucky.
Hi there. Thank you for being here. My question was kind of piggybacking off of that, was being right on the river. What were your projected runoffs for that? Do you foresee pollution, contaminants, anything getting into the waterway? And obviously, I'm very interested in hearing all about it. So take the time you need to explain it.
Sure. So we wouldn't be putting anything into the waterway, and wastewater specifically would be limited to. So we heat our stills with steam, so it's just hot water, and then the waste from the still after we distill the ferment is basically, it's like spent wine, right? We've stripped the alcohol out of wine, so it's not really grape juice anymore either. There's no sugar in it, and that is really the one consideration, what might go down the drain, whether it be grape juice, apple juice, sugar, fermented sugar, water, or rum. Solids, there's no solids to go down the drain or accidentally be dumped out back or anything, things like that. If you have any specific questions regarding the wastewater, I could maybe answer a little bit better there.
No, that was great. I'll let President Schumacher get into the specifics.
Okay.
All right. Alderperson Abel?
Yes, I have 2 questions kind of related to each other. Can you kind of explain more? You briefly touched on this, what you were envisioning or hoping to do in regards to the food pantry piece? And then additionally to what kind of, if, like, let's say everything is as successful as possible in this conversation, what is the timeline that y'all are looking at for utilities to get out of the building and for you guys to get in there?
So I have sort of a limited understanding of what the utilities needs are, but I think through discussions we've come to the understanding that the warehouse side could be made available first, and then we'd be looking at a 2 or 3 year time period before they would vacate the building entirely. EMS is, I think we have to have a conversation with them to better understand what their needs are. I am not trying to force anyone out within any strict timeline. I think we just need to have a conversation so we all understand what to expect. My intention would be to move in and get to work manufacturing. I need more space, and in order to grow my business, that's the goal, is to get more space. I currently have 25,000 square feet. This would give me another 5 to 10, and that's really all I need to grow in the short term. Down the road, once the rest of the building is opened up, I intend to remodel and open hospitality, restaurant, bar, call it a tasting room or for full service retail. And that would mean probably also remodeling the space that the food pantry is currently in. But I would be open to including in the plan a new space for them. I'm not looking at this as, there's plenty of space for me in this building to also share some space and to share it with the community in that way. I think I would actually be honored to do that. So I don't know if that answers your question on the food pantry side.
No, it does. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody else have any questions or anything from utilities, Jill? I know you guys have met, so, or you can have conversations offline if there's something that you want to talk about.
I guess from the wastewater standpoint is if this didn't move forward, we would require ultimately that they fill out basically industrial discharge like application. We go through exactly all the processes. One of the things that we would likely require is that they had at least at minimum a sampling manhole placed, so that if we needed to, if we end up finding there was discharge, that we get this application, we understand, we think everything's going to be okay. I mean, obviously there's something in the application that strikes us and says, nope, we're going to have, additional requirements, but assuming, say, that all looks good, then we have them install the sampling manhole. If at some point in time they started to discharge just something to us that we weren't comfortable taking anymore, we would require basically monitoring of that, samples to be taken. They might actually fall into industrial waste, so that they actually would be charged differently, say, than the rest of the customers. We also could then get a threshold where they would be required to actually pre-treat. So I think that's just something that needs to be explored as we move this forward. Obviously what they do there is concerning from the wastewater treatment plant. To add to that, it's super close to the wastewater treatment plant. There's not the opportunity for dilution as it makes it through the collection system, so it's something that we would be watching very closely to make sure that doesn't disrupt the plant.
Okay. And then just for the benefit of Alderperson now, we have some consultants we're working with right now as we speak to look at our future needs for combined public safety building. So that would be police, fire, and EMS. That study has been overseen by Brett Aber and Public Works Department. So we'll be getting some information on that, hopefully end of year, first quarter, about what those recommendations might look like. So we've already began that process. Utilities, you approved some money in your budget, right?
Correct. As far as your budget approval that occurred earlier this evening, we do have $500,000 in the budget for 2025 to start basically design efforts, and then hopefully we don't need anywhere close to this, but did go with $21.5 million in the 2026 budget for potential construction of a new Stoughton Utilities facility.
So whether or not the stars are aligned, I think it's too early to tell, but we certainly appreciate the interest in the building and for you to relocate your business to Stoughton. I think, you know, from what I gather, people around the table are really curious and maybe even excited about the prospect of it. Are there any more questions or comments before these guys drive home in a late hour? Anything from you, Rick?
Not at this time. My question was just on the time frame for utilities to get moved out, but that was addressed. So.
Yeah, my understanding is you guys have a place now, and you're going to be there for a little while at least, and you're trying to figure out, you know, what to do going forward.
Yeah, trying to find a seamless transition from end of lease to moving in, but you know that's tough. But yeah, first of all, I appreciate your time and look forward to answering.
Okay, I think Director Weiss has something else.
I'm sorry, thank you. One question I have is that I see the documents here that the closing date would be May 30th, 2025. Logistically, I guess, do you envision if that closing were to occur, this overall to get approved, what would your time frame for, because logistically right now we don't have any place for the warehouse, fleet, all that stuff to go. Office, I think we need to maintain that until we actually would have a new facility built. I think we're very nimble. However, I'm not sure how quickly we're going to find some warehouse space to be able to store all that stuff for potentially 2 years. So I guess I'm just wondering that closing date, how quickly do you foresee that you would actually be needing to get into that facility?
Can I answer it if you want me to answer
Go
it first?
ahead, yeah.
So,
I had a feeling.
So there's a financing component to this deal, which is an SBA loan product, partially back. And as a contingency of that financing, he needs to own or occupy 51% of the building. So that's the integral part. On day one, Nels in your hard bay has to be 51% of the building. So does the date need to be May 30th, 2025? No, it doesn't, right? This is just a draft to start future conversations. But, you know, at the day and time that he is closing on that, he does need to own or occupy 51% of the building. So we have to find a solution for that. Yep. Owner occupied.
Yeah.
Yep.
Owner occupied. I'm open to conversation about what works for everyone. You know, like we said previously, I'm not trying to force anyone out and make it difficult on anyone. If I need to extend my lease and negotiate that in whatever way I need to make something work, I can do that.
Hit your mic there. No problem.
That one of those nights. Jill, if you're just doing the warehouse part, is that 51%? I mean, what is the cutoff, or does it have to go, you have to occupy EMS and all that, because 50, you know, I'm just trying to figure out.
I think we did the math, and the warehouse alone would meet the 51%. I think it's actually just a little over. And, you know, we can talk about what everyone's needs are, and, you know, there's probably some space if the trucks and the guys aren't there that maybe you don't need, but that's all to be worked out. But yes, the warehouse alone, I believe, meets that requirement.
Okay.
All right, anything else? Okay, thank you again for being here and weathering a long meeting. They're not usually like this, although it seems like they have been lately.
Refreshments, right?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anything you want to discuss before we go into closed session? Otherwise, who wants to read the motion to go into closed session? Who wants the honors? Christina's going to do it? All right.
Fantastic.
He's designated.
The Common Council may convene in closed session per state statute 19.85. Is that a 1 or an I? I don't know. E, deliberating or negotiating the purchase of public properties or investing in public funds or conducting other specified business. Whenever competitive or bargaining reasoning requires a closed session, the Common Council may convene in an open session to discuss and take action on the subject matter discussed in the closed session. I so move.
There's a second?
Second.
Second by Majewski, and we need a roll call vote to go into closed session. Let us know when you're ready, Candy.
I'm ready. Okay, Caravello,
Aye.
Schumacher,
Aye.
Wozniak Scanlon, Butler,
Aye.
Hirsch. Aye. Lagaki,
Aye.
Majewski,
Yes, again.
yeah, okay, thank you. Abel,
Aye.
Lucky,
Aye.
and Nino.
Aye.
We have 10 others in favor.
I'll take 5.